All right, I guess it's live. Shalom, as Jacob said, and I say, of course. Um, so it's just me tonight. Jacob is traveling. Hopefully, I did that right. I clicked to do the countdown. I don't think it worked. So I'm trying to figure this out here. So let's see. I can do the thing in the chat if anyone would like to join. I'm not quite sure what to do. I didn't title this Hebrew Bible study because Jacob's not here. So I've had a crazy busy day so far. And so I'm not quite sure what I'm even going to talk about. I was trying to finish up the Book of Kings. So I'm probably just going to do that. I'll just start up and I'm just going to read the last 2 chapters or so that I had in the Book of Kings, because I think it was related to something that was on my mind earlier that I was thinking about. I'm not even sure how to tag the I'll post this in the comments. Hopefully that'll work. If it doesn't work, someone can let me know the link to join. I'm not quite sure how to like fix it in the chat where it stays there. So I haven't. Jacob usually does that, but I wanted to kind of keep this going because this is one of the things I look forward to the most throughout my week. Is being able to do this Bible study. So let me just check on my phone really quick and see if it's linked in there. Well, it looks like it's in the chat, but so all right, okay. Well, if anyone wants to join, if not, I'm just gonna, I guess, try to read and yeah, and just talk about whatever comes to my mind. I guess I don't know. So, and if you want to join, you're more than welcome to, because I don't know how this is gonna go. But sorry if this is gonna be boring to some people. That's not where it was. All right. Yeah, I've just been not personally keeping up with my Bible reading as much as I'd like to. So I'm just going to finish this up. All right. So in his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim, I guess how you say it, I don't know, Jehoiakim became his vassal 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him, and the Lord sent against him raiding bands of Chaldeans, bands of Syrians, bands of Moabites, and the bands of the people of Ammon. He sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord which he had spoken by his servants the prophets. Surely at the commandment of the Lord this came upon Judah, to remove them from his sight, because of the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he had done, and also because of the innocent blood that he had shed, for he had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which the Lord would not pardon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Jehoiakim rested with his fathers. Then Jehoiakim, his son, reigned in his place. I know I'm saying that wrong, sorry. And the king of Egypt did not come out of his land anymore, for the king of Babylon had taken all that belonged to the king of Egypt, from the brook of Egypt to the river Euphrates. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. His mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Jerusalem, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father had done. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, as his servants were besieging it. Then Jehoiakim, king of Judah, his mother, his servants, his princes, his officers went out to the king of Babylon, and the king of Babylon, in the 8th year of his reign, took him prisoner. And he carried out from there all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house. And he cut in pieces all the articles of gold which Solomon king of Israel had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said. Also he carried into captivity all Jerusalem, all the captains and the mighty men of valor, 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained except the poorest people of the land. And he carried Jehoiakim captive to Babylon, the king's mother, the king's wives, his officers, and the mighty of the land he carried into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. All the valiant men 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths 1,000, all who were strong and fit for war. These the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon. Then the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, Jehoiakim's uncle, king in his place, and changed his name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah, 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name, Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah, did evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For because of the anger of the Lord, this happened in Jerusalem and Judah, that he finally cast them out from his presence. Then Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. Now it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th of the month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and all his army came against Jerusalem and camped against it, and they built a siege wall against it all around. So the city was besieged until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. By the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine had become so severe in the city that there was no food for the people of the land. Then the city wall was broken through, and all the men of war that fled at night by way of the gate between two walls, which was by the king's garden, even though the Chaldeans were still encamped all around against the city. And the king went by way of the plain, but the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king, and they overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. So they took the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon at Riblah, and they pronounced judgment on him. Then they killed the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, put out the eyes of Zedekiah, bound him with bronze fetters, and took him to Babylon. And in the 5th month, on the 7th of the month, which the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He burned the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, that is, all the houses of the great, he burned with fire. And all the army of the Chaldeans who were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls of Jerusalem all around. Then Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away captive the rest of the people who remained in the city, and the defectors who had deserted to the king of Babylon with the rest of the multitude. But the captain of the guard left some of the poor of the land as vine dressers and farmers. The bronze pillars that were in the house of the Lord, and the carts and the bronze sea that were in the house of the Lord, the Chaldeans broke in pieces and carried the bronze to Babylon. They also took away the pots, the shovels, the trimmers, the spoons, and all the bronze utensils with which the priests ministered, the fire pans and the basins, the things of solid gold and solid silver. The captain of the guard took away the 2 pillars, 1 sea, and the carts which Solomon had made for the house of the Lord. All the bronze of these articles was beyond measure. The height of one was 18 cubits, and the capital on it was of bronze. The height of the capital was 3 cubits, and the network of pomegranates all around the capital were all of bronze. The second pillar was the same, with a network. And the captain of the guard took Seraiah, the chief of the second priest, and the 3 doorkeepers. He also took out of the city an officer who had charge of the men of war, 5 men of the king's close associates who were found in the city, the chief recruiting officer of the army who mustered all the people of the land, and 60 men of the people of the land who were found in the city. So Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, these brought them to the king of Babylon at Riblah. Then the king of Babylon struck them and put them to death at Riblah in the land of Hamath. Thus Judah was carried away captive from its own land. Then he made Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, governor over the people who remained in the land of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had left. Now when all the captains of the armies, they and men, heard that the king of Babylon had made Gedaliah governor, they came to Gedaliah at Mizpah, Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, Johanan, the son of Kareah, Sariah, the son of Tehumet, and the Netophathite, and Yaazaniah, the son of a Maakathite, they and their men. And Gedaliah took an oath before them and their men, and said to them, Do not be afraid of the servants of the Chaldeans. Dwell in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and it shall be well with you. But it happened in the 7th month that Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, the son of Elishama, of the royal family, came with 10 men and struck and killed Gedaliah, the Jews, as well as the Chaldeans who were with him at Mizpah. And all the people, small and great, and the captains of the armies arose and went to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldeans. Now it came to pass in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiakim king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 27th of the month, that evil Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, released Jehoiakim, king of Judah, from prison. Huh. So who is that guy again? Oh my goodness. Was that Zedekiah's father? I don't remember anymore. It gets kind of crazy towards the end here. He spoke kindly to him and gave him a more prominent seat than those of the kings who were with him in Babylon. So Jehoiakim changed from his prison garments, and he ate bread regularly before the king all the days of his life. And as for his provisions, there was a regular ration given him by the king, a portion for each day all the days of his life. That's so thank you for being with me. And I realized as I was reading, anybody's watching, I realized as I was reading, hey, there's Ezzy. Thanks, Ezzy. Believes in me. But I realized I hadn't prayed before I started, so that would probably be helpful. So I'm going to do that now. All right, Father, I'm before you right now. I just thank you for this time. Gosh, I thank you for this weather too. Nice breeze out tonight, Father. I thank you for sleep you've given me, my breath. I ask you for wisdom. I ask you for understanding. I ask you for peace. I ask you for clarity. I ask that you lead and guide my thoughts. I ask that you open up my eyes to see new things. Open up all our eyes to see new things, in our ears to hear new things that you're speaking to us. And in your name I pray. Amen. So I had see, as he says, horrible exile. The exile group included the prophet Ezekiel. I thought I had maybe heard that before. And as he also said, it's sad that, oh, let me click on him. It'll come up. Then he also said, it's sad that Ishmael is no longer used as a Jewish modern name. I didn't know that. Huh. Well, yeah, that part. So that part has kind of stood out to me. I'm not sure. It seems a little bit. It always feels kind of random to me. It's like right at the end, things are falling apart, and then there's like this last little rebellion, and I'm not even sure what happened to him. In Kings, it didn't really say much. It said they just went to Egypt, but I thought something bad happened to that group that Ishmael led, but I could be wrong. Maybe they did get away. But I'm not really sure the purpose of it stating that. I made some notes on my phone because I've just had a crazy busy day, like nonstop. But I had maybe about 15 minutes before I had to go into work, my second job. And so I tried to like just write down stuff that was on my mind, that I can maybe, I don't even know if it's going to be clear for me to read back through it. But they're like questions too. So I don't really know what to do. I wish like Hezi was, Hezi is here. I mean, I wish like Jacob was here as well, that I could ask him. Because I don't know that I'm going to bring any clarity to them, but there's things that interest me. My favorite psalm. Well, I don't know if it's my favorite psalm, but it's definitely in my probably top 3. But I think it's Psalm 130. Gosh, where is it? 137, maybe. I think it's 137. I don't know. It's by the rivers of Babylon. We sat down. We wept when we hung our harps on the willows. For those that carried us captive, requested of us a song or something like that. They requested us mirth. And it says, how can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. If I do not remember Jerusalem above my chief joy. Then what does it say? Gosh. Something about Edom and the day when raise it. Happy is one, O daughter of Babylon, you who are to be destroyed. Happy is the one. I'm just going to find it. It's right here. Remember, O Lord, against the sons of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, its very foundation, O daughter of Babylon, who are to be destroyed. Happy is the one who repays you as you have served us. Happy is the one who takes and dashes your little ones against the rock. Yeah. So it's a very sobering verse. I think a lot of people don't like that verse. I quite enjoy it, especially when I think you see the archetypal role that Babylon plays, when it begins to represent that spiritual kingdom. That's almost like opposite of all that is God. I mean, it's kind of like to me, I always think of it as the spiritual kingdom of pride. Because in this is was I know I put this in my notes somewhere too. I don't know where in this though, but even in Babylon, the king of Babylon, it's his judgment's pronounced in Isaiah 14. You who are exalted to heaven. It's Lucifer, son of the morning, the day star. But it says Lucifer, that day star, says, "I will be in the heavens. I will make my throne like God's. I will ascend to the heights of heaven." But there's one part, I will be like the Most High. He says, and it says, "Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit." Um, and so that's Adam, right? Because Adam takes to the fruit and says, because that's what the serpent tells him, deceives him with, says, "You will be like the Most High, knowing good and evil. You'll be like God." So that's when you exalt yourself to the Most High, to the Judge of good and evil, and you're going to play God and play Judge and all that stuff. And then it says, yeah, I always heard that with Satan, which I mean, I think it applies to Satan as well. But that's what I mean. Babylon kind of hits this archetypal, the king of Babylon as well has this archetypal figure of just like the basically, yeah, sort of Satan or man when he becomes Satan. It's like my friend Luke Thompson says, Christ and Antichrist are a hair's breadth away. And you're brought down to the lowest depths of the pits. And that's exactly what Israel says when the book of Lamentations, they say you brought us to the lowest depths of the pit. They give because they were exalted to the heavens in that moment or something in their pride. So that's that. Let me read through some of my notes and see what happened. So one thing that stood out to me, I guess, a lot in that I was reading that, I think that's I think that's one of the saddest passages in the Bible, one of the saddest stories, because you see this whole journey of Jerusalem. It's like you see this whole journey of Israel with Abraham, starting with Abraham, and he comes out of Babylon. He comes out of Babylon in this whole long journey, walking, building his family. They go to Egypt. They're enslaved in Egypt. They go through the wilderness, get through that, go into the land of promise, the land of Canaan. Finally, are defeat all these nations that are there, or at least try to, and then kind of are established, have a kingdom, have a temple, and then they're carried all the way back across the river Euphrates. I think the Great River Euphrates, something like that. Yeah, there's like this pattern of baptisms with Abram comes out of he's like through the Euphrates, through the Red Sea, through the Jordan, and then all the way back to the rivers of Babylon. And it's extremely sad. But there's like an overemphasis in that last part. I don't know if it's overemphasis, but it just talks about bronze after bronze after bronze. And so it's like the king of Babylon comes and he takes all this bronze and he burns everything with fire. And bronze had that. Let me go back to the part where it was. So this one king, Jehoiakim, I think it's the one. Maybe that's the one that gets pulled out of prison later. That's put there. But he's 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. His mother's name was Nehushta. So I don't know if there's something going on there, but her name is basically the same as that fiery serpent that Moses makes, Nehushtan, that they end up worshiping. So God says, "Make a fire." What's back in like the book of Numbers, I think, when the fiery serpents um are like biting all of God's people, and God says, "Make a fiery serpent." So Moses makes a bronze serpent. So there's this connection between bronze and fire. Whereas, like, if you were to shine a light on bronze, it would reflect and it would look like fire. And so when this king comes, it's basically the fire from heaven. It's the judgment from heaven, I guess you could say. It's a fire raining from heaven. The king of Babylon comes and it's just bronze. It's just like bronze that takes this. He takes the bronze, and it says there's bronze beyond measure. And so one thing that kind of which I'm not sure what to do with, but it's when Solomon builds the temple, I'm pretty sure it says the same thing. So this is what I don't know. I'm still like trying to explore all these things myself. So Solomon builds the temple. I'm trying to figure out where exactly it is. He temple and finished it. I'm trying to figure out where it was. Because I'm curious to see if the I know it says that the bronze when he's building the temple couldn't be measured even when he's building it. And I don't know what that what the connection is, like what the implication is of that. The only thing I can think of is like you're when you are the judge, you kind of bring down the hammer, bring down the fire from heaven. Um, I don't know. I don't know if it I can't remember if it says that the gold and the silver you can actually measure, but like whatever this fire is, this bronze, and maybe I'm connecting those two too much, but that can't be. Yeah, here it says, and Solomon did not weigh all the articles of bronze because there were so many. The weight of bronze was not determined. And this is here, Huram. I guess he hires this guy, uh, this king of Tyre or something, and he hires this, and then that guy assigns another guy whose name is very similar. It might be the same guy. I don't know. I think it is, but I think he's kind of half. His father's like from Tyre or something, the kingdom of Tyre, and his mother's from Jerusalem. And he's this bronze worker, and he comes and he helps Solomon build the temple. So I'm not sure what's going on there either. But I remember listening to some podcasts before, and they were talking about like some sort of weird angel they were in communion with who was telling him how to build stuff, and they named it, and it was that same name. So they probably got it maybe from the Bible. I don't know, but thought that was interesting. I know these are scattered thoughts. Let's see what Hezzy has to say before I get back on my notes here. That psalm is what every bride and groom say under the marriage canopy. After we say this in the line, the groom dips on the cup and shatters it. Wow, I'd be interested in why they say that. I love that psalm so much. It is to remind us that even in such a joyful moment, we are still incomplete until the Jerusalem is built. Wow. My family tradition, my grandfather marks the groom's forehead with ash from the first temple. Wow, that's cool. That's really cool. Wow. That's really cool. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the ash from the first temple, because the temple gets burnt down. Yeah, because this fire falls from heaven. So I guess what was kind of running through my head too is, like kind of like my friend, yeah, like Luke says, Christ and Antichrist are a hair's breadth away, and like the king of Jerusalem and the Babylon are like a hair's breadth away almost. Because there's this. I don't know if I want to get into this now. Ezekiel 16 is probably one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible. And I know I said that on here before, but it kind of talks about, Ezekiel's just an amazing book anyway, but it talks about them lifting themselves up in pride, and kind of God even compares Sodom and Gomorrah to, I think it's Jerusalem at the time. It's either Jerusalem or Israel, and it says that you basically justified Sodom because you knew better and you acted more wickedly than they. So if Jerusalem is acting like Babylon, if they have exalted, if God has exalted his kingdom, and I mean, it doesn't have to be Jerusalem, it can be kingdom, the United States, whatever. And they get exalted to God could even exalt them, but then Yeshurun grows fat and kicks, and you get exalted to the state, and you get comfortable, and you forget God, and then you think you're God, and as soon as you think you're God, that's when you become the king of Babylon, and then that's when Babylon comes, and then you find yourself in Babylon. But I know the sad part is I don't know if you necessarily find yourself there, because your eyes get plucked out, you get carried away in bronze fetters, and then you don't even know where you are. And it's interesting that God says, "I'm going to cast them out of my sight," and so He cast them out of His sight, but at the same time, their own eyes were plucked out. And so it's like, I don't know. It's absolutely terrifying and extremely sad to me. And I don't know. So anyway, what I had written, that was just one thing that was, I didn't know if there was some sort of connection there with the way Solomon built a temple and the bronze cannot be weighed. It just seems kind of strange to me. I'm not quite sure what to do with it. I guess that would make obvious sense if the bronze can't be weighed when when he builds it, then the bronze can't be measured when the king of Babylon comes and picks it apart. But I don't think it's that simple. Like I always feel like there's just way much more meaning in there than something as simple as that. But it's mentioned like multiple times. Like I know it talks about it in Jeremiah as well, like him carrying all the bronze and everything. So I wrote, "This is fire." Then I wrote, "Of course, is this fire from heaven? That can be measured." And also, so another thing that is, gosh, I feel like maybe related. I kind of want to play with a little bit, I guess. So Zedekiah gets his eyes plucked out. So back in previously in the Book of Kings. Sorry, I'm just talking. I just don't know what else to do. I can join if I want to. Previously in the Book of Kings, Hezekiah withstands the king of Assyria, and then afterwards, some ambassadors from Babylon come to like congratulate him or something, and he shows them everything. Shows them like everything that's in his house. I don't know if he shows them everything that's in the temple. He might, but he shows them. It says he shows them everything. And so then Isaiah comes to him, and Isaiah says, these now destruction's going to come. He's like, but it'll come to some of your sons. Like, don't worry, in your days you'll be fine. So Hezekiah's like, well, at least in my days I'll be all right, or something like that. I don't know. I don't want to make light of it. Like, I feel like him saying that is probably, there's probably a lot more there. But then, so that happens. So he kind of opens up his house and lets them in and shows everything. Then later, in this part I just read, Babylon comes, and they get Zedekiah, and they pluck out his eyes. And the same thing happens to Samson and Delilah. It's like a more particular, I guess, version of that. She comes, and it says same thing with Samson. He opens up his heart to her and tells her all, and then she comes and binds him, tortures him, and then plucks out his eyes, and carries him away captive. So there's similarity there, and I'm not quite sure what to do with it because it's kind of like a feminine figure that's seducing him, and I'm not sure if Hezekiah was kind of seduced in that way, because when I think of the king of Babylon in Kings, it just almost sounds like just this outside conquering force. But there obviously, I think, has to be some sort of seduction aspect in it, because in Ezekiel, it talks about the two harlot sisters, and it says, you saw those Chaldeans, like their portraits painted on the wall, and you lusted after them. So there was some sort of, they were enticed somehow. So I think there probably is something like some sort of Delilah figure at play there, maybe Jezebel figure. I'm talking in like terms of just the feminine aspect, where they're kind of drawn away and enticed, which makes me also kind of think of the garden story a little bit too, where the fruit is sin lays at the door and its desires for you. Like, it's almost seductive. It's enticing. What does James say in his epistle? He says something like that. How sin is conceived. James, but each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then, when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. So yeah, So I don't know. I've just been thinking about that's what I was thinking about earlier. Just the way that the feminine aspect of it is working and all of that. Because that was a question I wrote down. I said, let's see. The fire cannot be measured. The end of Kings, relation to Delilah and Judges. Does this relate to Adam and the serpent, letting the serpent into your heart? Then my question was, does Adam lose eyes? So he kind of gets cast out of the garden. I don't know if he kind of loses. I mean, I would think if he continued to eat of the fruit, or to play judge, or play king of Babylon, I guess you could say, then I would think he would be blind, and have lost his eyes. But I have no idea. I don't know, it's just a question I had. Yeah, and I wrote Christ and Antichrist are a hair's breadth away. That's why I think all the apostles ask. I think they wisely ask, "Is it I?" When Jesus says, "One of you will betray me," and they're all just like, "Was it me? Is it me?" I think that's a humble question. Um, let's see. Yeah, I wrote the Lord removes Judah from his sight, and the eyes of Zedekiah are plucked out. What does that mean? I don't know what it means. Then I wrote, what is the feminine aspect? So the feminine is kind of like a city. You can see that the daughter of Babylon is kind of the city of Babylon. Is it the whore of Babylon that rides on that weird uh, monster in the book of Revelation? The great harlot that sits on many waters. So if you think of the great harlot in the book of Revelation, like it's the daughter of Babylon. Like it ends up being the city of Babylon. Babylon has fallen, and it goes into this whole thing. But then, that harlot is also the church. It's also, I guess, Israel and Judah in the book of Ezekiel. I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't be, because she's the great harlot. She's almost like this archetypal figure, this harlot city. Like she's the embodiment of the harlot city. And then God says to um, in Ezekiel 16, I think that's it. I mean, and later in Ezekiel 2, you have the two harlot sisters, but in Ezekiel 16, he says, "How degenerate your heart, you brazen harlot! You do the deeds of a harlot." So, you can become the harlot and then find where, I guess, where you've sold yourself to all the pleasures and goods of this life, and you're drunk on the blood of the saints. You're drunk on the blood of martyrs, basically. Let passing your sons and daughters through the fire because you're, gosh, I guess you would just say it. You're Lilith in a way. It's kind of Lilith over against Eve. I don't know what. Sorry, this is probably why I don't like necessarily doing things. It's probably why I shouldn't just be talking by myself, because I probably don't make a lot of sense. I'm gonna read what Hezia says as well. During that period, both Jeremiah and Ezekiel are active. It was rare to have a prophet out of Israel. Same with Balaam. He sends the foreman to Israelites' camp. Yeah, that's another good one. Because he. So in Numbers, you have Balaam, who is kind of, I guess, the sorcerer prophet. I don't know, but he sends. He can't curse Israel, so he gets them to commit harlotry. This reminds me of that guy. Okay, so I'm streaming on Jacob's channel as well, so I should say this. These are my thoughts. These are not necessarily Jacob's thoughts. He allowed me to stream on his channel as well. So the reason I say that is because I was listening to Zevi and Jonathan Sledge, who we've talked about before, but Jonathan Sledge said something I thought was extremely interesting, because he was talking about the Balaam scenario in the Testament, and he said, it's Balaam gives this prophecy, and he says over Israel, like, I see them, they're going to flourish, they're going to grow, all these things, and then he goes and later after that he says to I think it's the king of Moab, or the Moabite king, he says, let me show you how a different way, like we can get them to stumble here, and so he gets them to commit harlotry. Baal of Peor, I think is what it's called, that whole scenario. And so Jonathan Sledge said this thing I thought was interesting that he said that sex is greater than prophecy, or something like that. And I thought that was a really interesting statement, because it has to do with covenant, and to break the covenant. I'm still not quite sure what to do with that. I wish I could figure it out. Like, I know I probably sound like I'm really scattered and all over the place. But all these things seem extremely important to me, because I feel like they're a lot they're related to a lot of stuff that seems to be getting brought up over and over in a lot of conversations I'm around, even with things like tradition and any law, any rule. Like, what do you do with it, and how do you and the whole idea of exclusion and inclusion and things like that. And I'm not even sure how to properly convey it verbally, how to how to say how they're all connected, but it seems to be also associated with like what Mathieu Fazot talks about with the feminine and things like that, because it's kind of about. I mean, it is about covenant, and it's about this harlotry in the city of harlotry, and how the feminine is working in all these stories with Delilah, with um, Bilam getting them to commit harlotry. Then you have Solomon who turns to all his other wives. And here's something interesting too that it was. Oh wait, there are some that see Jerusalem as the heart. Isaiah 1:21 and Jeremiah 3, Ezekiel 17. Yeah. There's some that see the churches are the too, because she kind of did the same thing. If you say God made a covenant with the church as well, then they sure ran amok with things, especially for a while in the Crusades and all that stuff. You could name a lot of things, but there is a saying, I can't remember where it came from. Someone else will know, but it says the church is a whore, but she's also my mother. Same thing with Jerusalem. It's there might be acts of harlotry at some point, but she's also your mother. And I so here's something, I guess, personal. This isn't kind of necessarily directly related to the Bible. I mean, it is not necessarily the Old Testament though. But my friend Cal had recently sent me a rosary. I mean, it's probably one of the nicest gestures I've ever had. I really cherish it. It's a beautiful rosary. And then he taught me how to pray it, was showing me how to pray it, because he either is Catholicism or he might have already converted. I can't remember if he's gone through the whole process yet. I think he has. But so we're praying it, and we're praying the prayer, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, both now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And so that's a Hail Mary. And I've said before multiple times, before I even started praying this rosary, is that I um I'll still say it. I'm like, they're all the same Mary. Like Mary Magdalene, the Virgin Mary, his mother, uh Mary that anoints his feet with oil, his head with oil, like they're all the same Mary. And even the fact that she's a virgin, I don't know like why that it seems necessary in terms of story for sure, because even I mean Israel's even called the virgin daughter. Like when Assyria, like I mentioned Hezekiah, he resists Assyria. Assyria comes to take Jerusalem. It's Jerusalem, yeah, and he resists and he turns to God in prayer and cries out to God. And then God says, he says to Assyria, the virgin, the daughter of Jerusalem, has laughed you to scorn. And he calls Jerusalem the virgin, like an archetype, like she is the virgin. And then later, in Ezekiel, she becomes the harlot. The reason I bring all this up is because I'm praying the rosary, and I told Cal later, and I said, the more I pray this, the more I'm just more convinced that they're all the same Mary. Um, they have to be, at least in my head, because you have Jerusalem, Ezekiel 16. I kind of just want to read through that. I may do that in a minute. I'll try to finish my thought. I may not have to. I'll kind of. So Ezekiel 16, God says, he's speaking over Israel, the nation of Israel, and he says, I found you struggling in your own blood, like a little babe, like a newborn babe. I found you struggling, and nobody cared for you. Nobody washed you off. Nobody swaddled you. Nobody rubbed you with salt. Nobody did any of these things for you. But I found you, and I did those things for you, and I caused you to grow, and I fed you, and you grew and matured, and your breasts were formed, and you became this beautiful virgin. So I adorned you. You became mine, and I put all these clothes on you. I put jewels on you. I made like you were beautiful, and I put all these ornaments of beauty upon you. But then it says, but then you trusted in uh, the food that I gave you. You trusted in your own beauty. You trusted in all these things, and then you turned and you played the harlot. And then not only did you play the harlot, but you were worse than harlot. You were an adulterer. Because harlots, at least God says, at least they take payment. He's like, but you didn't even take any payment. You were just doing it funsies. So, uh, you had the virgin becomes a harlot, right? The virgin becomes a whore. And then how does the whore become virgin again? And that's what repentance and forgiveness, I think, are all about. And so that's why Mary Magdalene, um, when I personally, and this might be blasphemous in Catholic circles, but when I pray the Rosary, I often think of Mary Magdalene, um, who had seven devils, which I think is significant as well, the numbering of that. Um, and she's often, I don't know, I think this is a point of contention too, is people will say that she was a whore, and then there's people that are like, well, there's no proof of that. Say she, but I think that's what I mean. It's the same thing with Virgin Mary. Like I think it's necessary in terms of story because she was a whore that gets that. Gosh, she who is forgiven much loves much. That's why I said I think she's all the same Mary, because the one who is a, it says in Luke, this woman comes to him who is a whore, and Jesus says, woman, your sins are forgiven you. And she's like weeping at his feet and washing his feet with her hair and crying. And he says that she loves much because she realizes how much she's been forgiven. Um, she loves almost greater than the virgin does, the whore who's been redeemed and restored back to virginity. Like that's the thing, it's back to virginity. Otherwise, uh, you can't be present. You have to be presented a virgin to God. That's what holiness is. It's being set apart to one identity, to one head, to the Godhead, something like that. So that's my rant. But that's why I think that Ezekiel chapter 16. It's not just that. That's some of the reason why I think it's so beautiful. The other reason is because that was actually the key chapter personally that convinced me into more of a reconciliation of all things, or you could say the universalist type viewpoint now. Um, because of the way Sodom and Gomorrah are justified through that harlotry. There's like a redemption of souls or something happening in that descent that happens through Jerusalem. Um, Let me see here. So I don't know how many heretical things I might be saying. In Judaism and in Christianity. So I don't know. Anybody's welcome to get on here and correct me. I'm just basically trying to fill up some time here because I'm not sure where to go. He is a powerful prophet, and he is compared to Moses. Who is that? Is that Ezekiel? That's probably Ezekiel, maybe, that I was talking about. He mentioned Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. Jeremiah is such a good book, too. Greetings, Jason and Hezzy. Rocking the old school Pizza Hut t-shirt. I don't know if it's old school, man. I got off work, so I had to get a second job. But I guess I didn't have to. But my normal job to work, because it has to do with housing market, so that hasn't been the best. It was booming. I mean, was it last year? And then about the summertime, prices were so high that it just kind of tapered off. So I just try to pick up some extra cash in the evenings, but it's been keeping me extremely busy, busier than I just really wanted, I guess. Um, it's been good. So, but this is a shirt they gave me, so I didn't know. It might be an old school shirt. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I literally like rushed home as soon as I got done and hopped on here, and I was gonna do this at 10, but I had to push it to 10:30 because it was really busy tonight. I guess because it's Wednesday and the town I live in is just like it's all churches. And so I think maybe people got out of church at like 8 or something, and was like, let's just order pizza. And so it's a lot. Oh, Balaam is powerful prophet. Oh, he is compared to Balaam is honestly one of my favorite prophets in there. Gosh, I'm just gonna read what he says, because what he says is just freaking amazing. So he keeps trying to prophesy this, trying to throw shade on Israel. Can't get it done. And then so he keeps going up to the high places, right? He keeps going up to the high places of Baal, I guess. And that he might observe the people from there. So he goes up to the high places of Baal, which is the highest places of, what does Baal mean? Lords or a king? I don't even, it means lords, I think. I don't know, heads will probably in a minute. But he goes up there, and so he's looking for this high place. Um, I'm guessing those might be similar to the high places in Jerusalem, where it keeps talking about throughout the whole book of Kings. It's talking about the high places were not torn down. This king beside the Lord that his father David did, yet he did tear the high places down. I think some of them did. Maybe Hezekiah, maybe Josiah tore down the high places, but most of them didn't. So, anyways, he goes to these high places of Baal, which makes me think of Babylon, Babylon. So it's kind of this self-exalted place, maybe you could say. I don't know why my mind goes there. Anyways, he does this like 3 times, and he's trying to curse Israel from these high places. He offers sacrifices. Maybe it's just twice. I can't remember. I think so. Yeah, I think it's just twice. But the third time says, now when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he did not go as at other times to seek to use sorcery, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam raised his eyes and saw Israel encamped according to their tribes, and the Spirit of God came upon him. I'm pretty sure the Spirit of God, I don't know if does it say the Spirit comes upon him on the other times? I'm not sure. He takes up an oracle though. But he sets his face toward the wilderness. So at first he's observing from the high place, trying to look at Israel. Now he turns his face toward the wilderness. So there's the wilderness is the place where God speaks, right? The wilderness, I think it's something connected with the word debar. I think the word midbar, wilderness is like midbar or something, and the word like 10 Commandments, the 10 words is debar. So the wilderness is kind of like the place where God speaks. I've heard that said before. I don't know if that's true. In like Judaism, have that saying or not. But he sets his face toward the wilderness. In the wilderness, God says in the Deuteronomy, it's like a place where he goes, Deuteronomy 4. It's like a place of humility, right? It's like not. It's like almost like the opposite of a high place to me. Gosh, what does he say? Deuteronomy 4. No, Deuteronomy 8. And you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. So he humbled you, allowed you to hunger, and fed you with manna, with which you did not know, nor your fathers know, that he might make you know that man shall not live by bread alone, but every man lives by it. But man lives by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Gosh, man, it's a freaking crazy thing. God even says you didn't know it right there. You didn't know it, and your fathers didn't know it. You're eating it the whole time. It's just absurd. Really good. I'd like to hear more on that. What Judaism has to say about that. But anyway, so he takes up his oracle and he says, "The utterance of Balaam the son of Beor, the utterance of the man whose eyes are opened, the utterance of him who hears the words of God, who sees the visions of Almighty, who falls down with eyes wide open. How lovely are your tents, O Yaakov, your dwellings, O Israel, like valleys that stretch out, like gardens by the riverside, like olives planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the waters. He shall pour water from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brings him out of Egypt. He has strength like a wild ox. He shall consume the nations, his enemies. He shall break their bones and pierce with the arrows. He bows down, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who shall rouse him? Blessed is he who blesses you, and cursed is he who curses you." And the second one, the utterance of Balaam, the utterance of the man whose eyes are opened, the utterance of him who hears the words of God, who has the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the visions of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes wide open. Like, if you could just put that into prayer form, or just recite that 3 times a day, gosh, that would like work miracles, I bet. The utterance of the man whose eyes are opened, the utterance of him who hears the words of God, the utterance and has the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the visions of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes wide open. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Yaakov, a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and batter the brow of Moab, and destroy all sons of tumult. Edom shall be a possession. Seir also his enemy shall be a possession. While Israel does valiantly, out of Yaakov one shall have dominion. and destroy the remains of the city. Then he looked on Amalek, and he took up an oracle and said, Amalek, first among the nations, but last until it perishes. He looked on the Kenites, and he took up an oracle and said, Firm is your dwelling place, and your nest is set in the rock. Nevertheless, Cain shall be burned. How long until Asher carries you away captive? Asher, I don't know if I said that right. Then he took up his oracle and said, Alas, who shall live when God does this? But ships shall come from the coast of Cyprus, and they shall afflict Asher Eber, and so shall Amalek until he perishes. So Balaam rose and departed and returned to his place. Balak also went his way. And then that's when they tricks him into harlotry. So, and there's that weird thing with Phineas and the zeal of the Lord, and I still have not yet figured that out either, because there's something going on there, because God is a jealous God, a consuming fire, and Phineas gets commemorated for his zeal, and he kills this harlot girl and the one she's sleeping with, and her name is, what is it, Cosby, something like that. I don't know, and I think it means like I something like that. I can't remember what it means. I've just always been kind of confused. I haven't been able to pin it down. I don't know if I necessarily should pin it down. A lot of these things I don't think you can pin down, or you'd probably kill them, because they need to not be able to be pinned down so that they can still speak and be living words, I guess. But just the whole idea of that, I would like to almost figure that out, because I'm not really sure. I'll try to go into it more. I want to read the comments really quick. Not only did he fail with his curse, rather we now recite his blessing in our morning prayer. That's so cool. It's interesting, since the whole story is being told by behind the scenes, the Israelites are not experiencing any of this. As if to say that as long as the Israelites have their camp oriented properly, they will be protected from the outside forces. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking of talking about next. I'm not really sure. Okay, so the confusing thing to me, all right, so how does this relate? What about the feminine aspect? So you have all this is happening at the end of Kings. They're being carried off to Babylon. This fire, this judgment from heaven, this force is coming down, raining upon them. Jerusalem gets destroyed. They get carried off to Babylon. And I put, what about the feminine aspect? The feminine is the city. How does this relate to Absalom? How does this relate to David not willing to take the throne from himself? Because when I was talking earlier about Delilah, like there's almost this seducing aspect. And I don't know if this happened with Absalom. Absalom, to me, for some reason, I always think he's kind of similar figure of what I've heard described in Christianity as the Antichrist, something like the figure in Revelation, the figure in the book of Daniel, that persuades the people with flattery, because he kind of does that. He says, "Oh, I wish that I could be king," and then the people come before him for judgment, and he basically flatters the people and says, "You're right, you're right, you're right," and just kind of wins the people over through something like flattery. So does he seduce the city, or does the city seduce him? I'm not really sure what's going on there. There's also a weird thing with his hair too. I don't know if that kind of relates to the Samson and Delilah story as well. Or Absalom has long hair and he chops it off every year. I don't necessarily think it does, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was wrong. Anyway, so it seems I'm just still not quite I bear with me because I'm literally just scratching the edges of these ideas. So the city, did he seduce the city, or did the city seduce him? And then you have this other where David, it's almost like the men that are following David almost try to seduce him to take the city for himself. They're like, Saul is here. Here's your opportunity. This happens twice. And they're like, kill it. You can kill the king and be king yourself. It kind of reminds me a little bit, don't know why it reminds me a little bit of Joseph with Potiphar's wife, where he has this moment where he can for himself, and he doesn't. But I'm not quite sure what to do with that. And how does this relate to the ark? How does this relate to Lot in the middle of Sodom and Gomorrah? How does this relate to Moses in Egypt? Because if I'm looking at the city as kind of the harlot, so that you have the harlot Babylon, Jerusalem is also kind of like a mother city. It's a mother, so the city is kind of like this feminine mother, this feminine aspect. It's kind of, if you're the king, it's kind of like, I mean, it's your bride. Um, so what is going on there, and what is the proper process of this? Like, how does this happen? So this is why I'm saying, like, I feel like this is somewhat related to the whole topic of like traditions and like even propositions and how to exclude and include, and how does truth even spread? Like, how does any truth spread to uh because any proposition inherently excludes and includes, and it kind of, and it can keep, it's kind of insular in that way. And how did the gates get opened and it lets other people in? And I'm still not quite sure about that process, because there's this weird, because we have all these stories here of like David does it this way. That's what I mean. I haven't wrapped my head around this at all. The one that's interesting me the most right now is Joseph, because it's like um he has this prophecy where he's kind of gonna be king, and then he basically has to, he basically is tested, his whole, like, his life is tested, but he goes, and so he gets sold by his brothers. He goes and he has this chance where he can, Potiphar's wife, like he has a chance to take Potiphar's womb, like that is Potiphar's, uh like his wife is his future in a way. It's a womb, it's his house, it's his children, like it, he has a chance where he can kind of steal that for himself, or at least infiltrate it, besiege it, you might say. um I don't, and he refuses not to. But then, so instead of that, instead of, then he gets like almost plunged to the depths of Sheol. He gets thrown into the dungeon, into the lowest pit, and he has to wait there. And then he's almost made ruler of that area, and then he slowly keeps rising to the top. And it's like this, gosh, it's almost like 11 or something. I don't really know. Um, then he ends up becoming basically ruler over Egypt, his second ruler. But he basically has all of Pharaoh's power at that point, I think. Um, it's just incredible that that process works that way, and it kind of, it seems all these. I'm not even sorry. This is probably extremely irritating and horrible for anybody watching to watch this. It kind of reminds me of Jonah a little bit too, as well, because he's sent to Assyria, and he goes down into this. He like goes down again, kind of like um. j- I can't think of his name. I'm drawing a blank again. Kind of like Joseph does, and then but Jonah, then he goes to Assyria and kind of preaches to them, and they're kind of offered repentance as well. But he goes to the depths, like he goes down to hell. When he's in the whale, he goes, out of the belly of hell I cried. And in Ezekiel, it's prophesied over Assyria that they're like a tree that's cast down, that's cut down and thrown into hell. So it's almost like he goes to the depths of hell to become some sort of mediator, to like touch one and bring it back to repentance or something, back to God. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure. The David figure kind of confuses me a little bit. I wish I could articulate this better, or try to figure it out. It's probably something incredibly simple that other people know. But what did he say? Um, as he said, if I'm here in an hour, I'll hold you and keep it up. I'll be here. I might take a short break for a second, in a minute or something, and get a jacket because it's starting to get a little cooler. But um, yeah, it's just like this. I'm trying to figure out how this works, because like, how do you incorporate the stranger? This was kind of related to what we were talking about. We were talking about revival, that revival that's going on in the U.S. and everything, and there seems to be um it makes sense in my head to incorporate the stranger when something like the picture that Jesus gives, or the picture of the 10 martyrs or something like that in Judaism, where um, these figures are basically split open, um, and almost become like a door for people to enter through, by where the king makes this, he's kind of at this highest seat, and then that's when he becomes a he makes a leap and becomes a martyr. He dies to himself, and you don't have to necessarily even like physically die or something, but you bow. You don't you're at the top, you're at the highest, you're the most high now, and but yet you don't make that leap to play God. You fall on your knees before God, like Solomon does at the beginning when he first completes the temple. He's king. He's basically, as far as the biblical story goes, he's the king of kings at that point, and he says he falls down on his knees before a whole congregation and bows before God and worships God and says, "You are God of gods, like the heaven of heavens cannot contain you." And so to me, that is, at that moment he becomes the door. It's like he falls down, um, and is like just kind of split apart, um, rips himself open in humility, and other people can enter through that into something like the presence of God or something. I mean, the presence of God comes after that and fills the temple. Um, Man, I feel like I could just be running amok with all these ideas, because I have not grown up in Judaism, or but maybe this is a good thing though. Who knows? Maybe this is just strange thoughts that maybe someone can make connections out of anyway. Um, yeah, I kind of wanted to think about the whole part of. I just hadn't had enough time today to think about it, but the way that's working in the story with the city, and the way the kings work with the city, and how um yeah, the whole part with David and Absalom, and then Absalom sleeping with his concubines. I mean, there's like kind of more of this weird harlotry happening. And then David goes out to the Mount of Olives and ends up coming back and is declared king. I don't think I didn't pay attention enough throughout the Book of Kings to look at each particular king to see when this thing is sort of happening. I wish I could think about it more. I'm really sorry for people listening. I am, like you said, before I went into work, I felt I had more of a clarity of mind. Things were maybe clicking better. And now I'm kind of struggling to get back on track. The reason I mentioned the ark too is because the ark is kind of like a womb that contains the logos. It's like every creature that God makes, it has DNA. It's like a word. It has structure. It's a logos, and God puts it all into the Ark of Noah, and then that is in this. It's like it becomes kind of like a seed in itself, but it's still in contained. So it's like an egg or something like that, and then it is surrounded, separated from, concealed from the outside chaos that's happening around it. Um, and there seems to be that happens in the story and patterns, and I'm not quite sure when that's necessary and when it's not. But that seems to happen in Bel and the Dragon when Jerusalem is carried to Babylon, and then Daniel, the prophet Daniel, in this story, he's in Babylon and he has to like kill this dragon, and so he basically makes a little ark of pitch and like straw and things like that, and gets the dragon to swallow it, and then the dragon ends up bursting open and dies from swallowing this thing. Um, yeah, and I'm not quite sure what to do that, because you have the Ark of Noah. It's kind of similar, and it's surrounded, protected by this chaos. Then you have the Ark of Moses, kind of the same thing. There's all this violence happening. These um, babies are being destroyed, and uh, the nation is this feminine, is being pressed up to the point of birth, right? Because there's these midwives, so they're about to come to birth. Um, the woman is basically crying out in birth pangs, crying out to God, and then they're delivered through the Red Sea, and then you have that Ezekiel 16. I found you there struggling in your own blood. Um, then you have that whole story. So anyway, I know I've just been rambling about the same thing over and over through different sideways points, but I don't know. I guess I could say why that part made me universalist. I kind of already touched on it. It's in Ezekiel 16. It was just very sobering. It was that coupled with Romans 11, that God might have mercy on all, that God's committed all to disobedience, and He might have mercy at all. It's just the way, um, like you could, some could maybe try to argue that God was cruel for just raining down fire and judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah. But then when you look at what they were described as doing in Ezekiel, like they, I'll just read it the way or people know I'm not lying. I'm not making it up. I know we've said it on this channel before as well. So it says, "I live," says the Lord God. Oh well, I'll just read it. Indeed, everyone who quotes Proverbs will use this proverb against you, like mother, like daughter. You are your mother's daughter, loathing husband and children, and you are the sister of your sisters who loathe their husbands and children. Your mother is a Hittite and father an Amorite. Oh my gosh, that's good. Your mother is a Hittite and your father was an Amorite. What the heck? That's insane. I'd like to hear more about that. Um, what the heck? Your mother was a Hittite and your father was an Amorite. Does that have to do with Bathsheba again? What? But who's his Amorite then? Your elder sister is Samaria, who dwells with her daughters to the north of you, and your younger sister, who dwells to the south of you, is Sodom and her daughters. You did not walk in theirs, nor act according to their abominations, but as that were too little, you became more corrupt than they in all your ways. I live, says the Lord God. Neither your sister Sodom nor her daughters have done as you and your daughters have done. Look, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. She and her daughter had pride, fullness of food, and abundance of idleness. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy, and they were haughty and committed abomination before me. Therefore I took them away as I saw. So that was the sin of Sodom. So they were basically pride, full of food, and didn't care for the poor, the needy. And that was why God brought judgment on them. Um, but then Samaria did not commit half of sins, but multiplied your abominations more than but you have multiplied your abominations more than they. And then God says this. He says, you have justified your sisters by all the abominations which you have done. You who judged your sisters bear your own shame also, because the sins which you committed were more abominable than theirs. They are more righteous than you. Yes, be disgraced also and bear your own shame, because you justified your sisters. So God right there says, because your sister was not a byword in the mouth of the days of your pride, now she's justified. Um, so if they're if I wanted to argue, say I want to argue that all those people, God made examples of them, and they're all thrown into hell, and they're burning eternally. Like Sodom burns eternally, like it does in memory. Like that's what we think of it. It's Sodom and Gomorrah. We think of that's the image we have because it's like archetypal now. They're eternally burning in that way. But yet, in the particular, God says they're all justified um, because they were not a byword in the mouth of the days of our pride. So it's like if I say they were down in Sheol, down in hell, down in the grave, well, they're now redeemed from that because God might have mercy on all. Um, so that's kind of okay. So as I'll just speak, I try not to bring too much, since it normally is a Bible study, I try not to bring too much Christianity into it. But because I am a Christian, this is what kind of led me to believe in that ultimate reconciliation. And it doesn't exclude hell because, like I said, they're in hell. It includes like a harrowing of hell, where the gates of hell are truly given to Rachel, right? She has the gates of her enemies. But God So it says, "For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. For as you were once disobedient to God, yet now you have obtained mercy through their disobedience. Even so, these also have been made disobedient, that through the mercy shown you, they also may obtain mercy. For God has committed all the disobedience that he might have mercy on all. Oh, the depths and the riches, both of the wisdom and the knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments and his ways, past finding out." So you take that and you say, well, God showed you mercy, that through the mercy shown you, that you might have mercy on others. And so if you're going to judge your sister Sodom, well, then God says you're more wicked than they are. So through the mercy I've shown you, that mercy you would receive it and then show them mercy. So it's this perpetual mercy machine that continually restores and gives life and forgives and heals and renews. Because that's what God does. And so that works eternally, and like that reaches down to the depths of hell, because like in Christianity they say that all the time, that Christ went down to hell and he preached. Even in Peter it says he went down and preached to the spirits, and he went down to hell, to Sheol. And if you read the book of Job, that's what those things are described as, like a prison. Job chapter 3, it talks about that's what Sheol is. It goes in the pit, in the prison. Is it? I gotta get there. Let's see. I know it's other places in Job too. For now I would have been still. There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary are at rest. There the prisoners rest together. They do not hear the voice of the oppressor. The small and the great are there, and the servant is free from his master. Um, so he's talking about the grave there. Let's see, Ezekiel. Where's Ezekiel? Ezekiel's one of my freaking favorite books ever. So where is it? The lowest depths of the pit, right? I think it's Ezekiel. Where it's talking about the judgment. Her graves are set in the recesses of the pit, and it's talking about Assyria, and her company is all around her grave. So their graves are set down there. Jonah goes down there, goes down to Sheol. Jerusalem, it says they were sent in Babylon. They went to the lowest parts of the pit, and they're redeemed out of there. So, that's basically it. I don't know a better way to put it. He who was forgiven much loves much, and through that mercy shown you might have mercy on all. And that's hightail. That's, yeah, I don't know a better way to describe it unless somebody asks questions. So if you have any questions, post them in the chat. I'm gonna, I guess, take a break really quick and get a jacket and maybe get a little more coffee. And if anyone wants to join, sorry if this has been unbearable. This is what reading the Bible is like for me a lot of times. Sometimes it clicks a little better, but when it comes to talking about it, it's usually extremely hard for me. I've often tried to read through and uh, kind of film a little clip of myself and talk about things, and I usually just boom, boom, like I just uh, will bounce all over. Either that or it's just incredibly dry, and I don't actually think of anything else. But I'm not very good at articulating things. So if you got questions, or at least I say that, maybe I am, and I don't even know. But yeah. Anyway, I'll be back. Right. Sorry, that's such a long pause. So I don't know what to do now. I keep reading, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to go there, but I don't think I want to just hop over into Ezra. Right. Ezra's next. Ezra, Nehemiah. Yeah, because I finished Chronicles. Um, so I don't know. As far as Bible study goes, if anybody wants to join, please do. Um, the link should be on there, but I'll post it in just in case. Um, let's see. Yeah, I'm not even sure where to go. I was talking a little bit about Genesis 3, how the serpent was, in the whole idea of with Balaam, how that even ties in being seduced and things like that by into harlotry, into committing harlotry. So did that? I guess that kind of happened here with Adam and God in a way, where he's supposed to be dedicated to his creator, and he, I guess, plays the harlot because I mean it seems like the same pattern that happens throughout the rest of the scripture. Um, yeah, I don't even know what this means in terms of like the whatever the apocalypse, or I guess you should say Armageddon. I'm not really sure because the pattern repeats and it seems to repeat all the way up. If you are reading a Christian Bible, all the way up to Revelation, where it seems like it even repeats again. You have the great harlot Babylon at the very end, and the New Jerusalem is seen there as well. Which I mean, I guess isn't just the Book of Revelation. That's in Ezekiel as well. Where it talks about the new temple, the New Jerusalem. All that is there. Um, in the battle of Gog and Magog is in Ezekiel as well. That's what I mean. Revelation, it just seems to be a repetition on a lot of Old Testament themes, and it's like it's kind of almost harping on the patterns of those or something. But I don't really know what to do with all of them yet, and I'm not quite sure uh, how that works. Gosh, with this, it's like you have this one on one side. There's this act of great harlotry that's happening with Babylon and the daughter of Babylon, the great harlot. And then on the other side, you have this unveiling of this new world, this new bride before God, this new creation kind of thing. And I don't even know why that is. And it seems like there's always wine involved. There's always like good wine and bad wine. There's the harlot's drunk on this blood, the blood of martyrs, the blood of the slain, and the bride is like a celebration of wine or something like that. And I don't know if they're happening simultaneously. I don't understand it necessarily. Because even in Genesis, I mean that happens with Moses, right? The world is filled with violence. It's like basically flooded with violence. The innocent blood has been shed. Like I read earlier, it said in the book of Kings. Yeah, I think I read it. Manasseh, the king Manasseh, had shed innocent blood in the land, and that converted. And it says that I think in one of the first 5 books, it might be Deuteronomy, might be Leviticus, but it says the innocent blood cannot be. You can't make atonement for it when the innocent blood is shed in the land because the blood just fills up. Like Abel's blood is crying out from the ground, and the earth becomes just full of blood, and then um so it's like drinking in the blood of the slain. So you have this harlot that's getting drunk off the blood of her children, basically. That's why I mentioned Lilith earlier. Um, you have to do that to stay young. Um, and she says, "I will be queen. I sit as queen. I am, and there's none like me. I am the lady. I am the lady of the kingdoms. I am lady forever." And so that's happening on one hand, and then there's this in Noah, in the story of Noah, that's happening in the whole world. the earth, say Mother Earth, is filling up with violence, and so she has to cast out the inhabitants because the land will vomit you out, it says, when you fill it with violence. So the earth floods, but then you have Noah right afterwards, this new heavens and this new earth, this like unveiling, this new creation. He lifts the tent off the ark. Um, he opens the windows, like there's this new veiling, this new revelation, this new apocalypse, I guess you could say. And then he goes and plants a vineyard and gets drunk. Um, so I mean, I don't really know what to do with it. It's this weird pattern that happens. And then, um, gosh, I'm trying to think of where else it is. I mean, it's in the book of Revelation, of course. I don't know. I was kind of talking to our friend Yosef about it a little bit, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, or because I don't know how those things are perceived um in Judaism. Whereas I feel like, I mean, I don't even know what I necessarily bring to the table, other than maybe like a more Protestant Christian perspective that I was brought up with. I guess maybe Greek, because I've read a few of the Greek stories, so maybe that's kind of seeped in of how they perceive wine. So maybe I'm thinking about it a little wrong. Um, but there always seems to be this dual nature of it with those two things, where the vine has blossomed and budded and it's ripe, and so you have this treading of the grapes. So in the book of Revelation, it says the angel speaks from heaven. It says the vine of the earth is fully ripe. Take it and thrust it into the winepress. So this angel takes his sickle and he cuts the vine and he throws it into the winepress, and it says the blood comes up to the horses' bridles because it's stomped. And it kind of almost reminds me of is it Yehu, or is that it? Yeah, in the Old Testament when he tramples Jezebel under his horse's feet and the blood splatters everywhere. Like kind of that imagery reminded me of that. I don't know if it's directly related though, but so you have this happening, like the people, like a nation fighting nation, and the people are just trampled underfoot, and it's like grapes, and their blood is being poured out. It's like a great wine press, and these people are dying, and the violence is happening, and the earth is drinking up the blood. Like all these things are happening, and I'm not quite sure what to do with that, because there's this, yeah, there's like this that's happening, but then there's also this flip side. Like even when the Israelites are trying to go into the land of Canaan, it says before they go in, before they go to Egypt, God tells Abraham, eventually they'll come back to this land of Canaan, but right now they cannot inhabit it. It's not their land. And I can't give it to them yet because the iniquity of the Amorites is not complete. So there needs to be this filling up of iniquity or something. Same, it talks about that in the book of Revelation too. Like her sins have reached to heaven. There's like this filling up of iniquity, this filling up of violence or something, and the cup becomes full. And then she has to drink it and drain the dregs, drink dry, and shatter the glass. I think it says in Ezekiel. So you fill up this cup full of blood, and then you have to drink it. It's given her, and she has to drink it down. So the Amorites have to fill up this iniquity. So then when the Israelites go back, they go to spy out the land, and what do they find? They find these ripe grapes, these clusters. What is it called? Escatol or something like that. And they call it that because of the clusters of grapes they found there, because the grapes were so like just full, I guess. And so it's like the season for wine. It's the season for them to go in and conquer the land. It's the season for grape stomps, based. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do with it exactly, because it's like there's a new creation that comes through that or something, but I don't. Um, it seems I don't know that it has to be violent, but it sure seems like that's how it happens or how it plays out sometimes. Um, I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I'm just rambling. I feel compelled to talk, um, and maybe I shouldn't. This coffee's absolutely terrible too, by the way. Trying to think if there's other places where that happens with the vine. Um, I just don't know how it's all connected. It's very strange to me. That's one thing I've been kind of struggling with for a long time now is kind of that dual aspect of wine where it's kind of it's there for celebration, but it also seems to be a symbol of like violence as well. It's like a symbol for joy, but a symbol of yeah, I don't know, of harlotry in a way. Um, yeah, yeah, I'm trying to think because the Nazarite vow in Numbers, there's this Nazarite vow where you basically make a vow, I think, to set yourself apart to God. And so when they do that, they let their hair grow long. They don't eat and they can't eat any wine. They can't consume any wine. And this vow, you can't eat wine, vinegar, like you can't have any wine. And then you let your hair grow out too. And I heard that's supposed to resemble like an untended vine. Like you're not actually partaking of the vine. Your locks are kind of untended. They're untrimmed. Um, they're wild. I don't know if that like the uncultivated, I guess you could say. I don't know if that's true. So I heard that somewhere. I don't know if that's true, but they don't partake of any wine. Um, so I'm not sure what the connection there is either. Like I don't know if there's. I wish I could get more clarity on these things. I don't know. Someone Teo said he's learning from my ramblings. Yeah, I sure hope someone is. You can come on here, man. I'd appreciate it. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I'm also quite exhausted. Trying to look in my notes now and see if I had anything. Basically, I kind of had questions. Yeah, I 'cause usually when I read, I try to take notes in my reading. If I have a question, I think I can ask Jacob or something. But so here's one thing that's been interesting to me. I'm not sure what to do with though. I mean, um, but so I was talking to Joseph earlier, and he actually told me there was this pun going on here because there's a where did it say in the book? I was reading because I've been reading in Kings, right? So there was a, and I mentioned earlier, like Christ and Antichrist are a hair's breadth away because when God exalts you, I mean, it's kind of like anything. If you're exalted in any position, you can easily get lifted up and right, and um you're God basically, or there's a song by As Cities Burn. Oh, there's like a lot of songs by them that I really love. I love their lyrics, but there's one that says, "This is me at my darkest, looking down from my tower to heaven. My reputation is what I am on the scale in the eyes of mankind. The more I get beneath me, the higher and more out of reach." So I just like that line. This is me at my darkest when I'm at the height of heaven, like when I'm at the heights and I'm looking down to heaven. Like I'm exalted myself above the heavens at this point. So Christ and Antichrist is kind of the same thing. Like the more you become Christ-like, the more you have this that's a stumbling stone, right? Because the stumbling stone is your own righteousness. The more you become righteous, the more you live rightly, the more you can stumble on that and think it's your own righteousness and trust in your own righteousness. And that's what God says in Ezekiel. He says it in Deuteronomy over and over. He says, it says it in Romans too. It says, they trusting in their own righteousness did not submit to the righteousness of God. I think it's Romans, either Romans or Corinthians, one of the two. So yeah, find yourself Christ and Antichrist. Yeah, Romans 10. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and seeking to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted to the righteousness of God. For Christ is the end of law for righteousness to everyone who believes. That's why, like, you could actually be perfectly sinless, probably, and still be of sin, because you could still not reflect any nature of God. You could just be a cruel judge, uh, and just be better than everybody else and condemn everybody else, and show no mercy. So there has to be a balance between two. Why did I even say that? What was I talking about now? That was a total sidetrack. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, what Joseph was telling me. So where was it in Kings? Because there was this. So Solomon, he basically establishes the kingdom. He establishes the temple. And if it was really interesting to me, this has been sticking out to me for a long time. When Solomon first takes the throne from Dave after David, it's a repeat. It's like it's very. I mean, it's too similar to the garden story back in Genesis 3. It's just absolutely astounding. And so he comes in as a little child, and I think Solomon gets it right. He chooses wisdom over knowledge of good and evil. Some might disagree with that, but he says, I need wisdom so that I can discern between good and evil to judge uh, your people. So it's almost like he wants knowledge, good and evil, but he needs wisdom in order to discern that. And so, what does he say? All this I prove by wisdom. I it was all this I proved by wisdom. I said I will be wise, but it was far from me. So like that is the wisdom, is to know how however wise you are. Like the more wisdom you gain, the more you realize how little you know. You actually know how much of a child and how much you need God. So anyway, Solomon comes into the kingdom that way. He establishes a kingdom, builds a temple, and then eventually, he falls into harlotry. His heart is turned away to his wives. But this was the verse, and I asked Joseph about this. It says, Then the king defiled the high places that were east of Jerusalem. So this is Josiah. He kind of is trying to restore some type of godliness back in Jerusalem. And it says, Then the king, Josiah, defiled the high places that were east of Jerusalem, which were on the mount of corruption, which Solomon king of Israel had built for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Sidonians, and Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and Milcom, the abominations for the people of Ammon. So Solomon builds these high places for these gods of his wives, I think is what it says earlier in the chapter. But when I asked Joseph about this, I said, it says this is a mountain that's east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives is also the east of Jerusalem. It says that in Zechariah. So I didn't know if there was a play going on here, because I was like, there's probably just plenty of mountains all over. And I was so pleased with his answer, because he said, like, there are a lot of mountains, so it could have been a different mountain, but he said there actually is a pun there playing on that word, because the Mount of Olives, Mount of Olives, right? And olives are made for oil, which is made for the oil of anointing the Messiah. So it's kind of like there's this pun going on here where it's like Solomon has defiled this messianic mountain in a way, or something like that. So that's what I mean when I'm saying like Christ and Antichrist are a hair's breadth away, because it's just the kingdom of Jerusalem, the city of Salem, the city of peace, the holy city of God, uh, the New Jerusalem, and the Book of Revelation. Any of them, it's like anyone you want to look at, it's like a hair's breadth away from being the harlot Babylon, becoming that. Because when you're exalted to heaven, well, then you're in heaven. You're up in heaven, and it's like then you can much more easily find yourself playing God or declaring yourself God. And where does she say it? I wanted to find the part where she says it. But the good news to that is, yeah, then that city is made a desolate waste. But then God also makes the desolate waste a spring and a garden. What does he say that in Ezekiel? Like he makes the barren land like the Garden of Eden or something like that. So it's his restoration of the harlot back into like virginity, into a virgin garden. But I'm trying to find this spot because I thought it was in Isaiah where I just wanted to read the words that are from. So you have God over and over in Isaiah. He keeps saying, "I am the Lord, and there is no other. There is no God besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. There is no God besides me." I think this is it, chapter 47. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For you shall no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal, remove your veil, take off your skirt, uncover the thigh, pass the rivers. Your nakedness shall be uncovered. Yes, your shame will be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not arbitrate with a man. As for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is named, the Holy One of Israel. Sit in silence and go into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no longer be called the Lady of Kingdoms. And then this is what and you said, I will be lady forever, so that you did not take these things to heart, nor remember our end of them. Therefore hear this now, you who are given to pleasures, who dwell securely, who say in your heart, I am, and there is none besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know the loss of children. So she says the exact same thing that God has been saying. God says, I am, and there is none besides me. And then this city, the daughter of Babylon. I think she's even called the virgin daughter of Babylon. Yeah, virgin Babylon. It says, I am, there is none besides me. I think that's in Revelation as well. Says the same thing. Yeah. I sit as queen, and I am no widow, and I will see no sorrow. That's in Revelation chapter 18, verse 7. So it's kind of quoting out of Isaiah there. It says, when I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. So God's people are there, lest you share in her sins, unless you receive her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities, rendered her just as she has rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mixed double for her. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as queen, I am no widow, I will not see sorrow. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burnt with fire. For strong is the Lord who judges her. Gosh, guys, I'm tired. Sorry. Yeah. So I don't know how much more I got. I'm tired. If Hezzy hops on, I'll stay in chat. But he said he could be on in an hour, but I'll probably hang around then. I don't even know how I got on all that. Oh, because of the Mount of Olives being like the Mount of Corruption. It's kind of like the same thing. Like yeah, there's like a pun happening. But it's more than a pun, that's for sure. The pun in the words, I guess, in the way it's written, but in the reality of it, it yeah, it's extremely sobering, and I don't know, cautious, because I guess I just you see that happen in over and over again throughout history. You know, the other thing I'm extremely interested in is this whole Bathsheba thing and the daughter of Shua, and then incorporating the stranger through the line of Judah is incredibly fascinating to me because Judah, the whole Judah and Tamar story, I haven't quite figured out how this works though. It's just, I mean, maybe I shouldn't figure out how it works. Maybe it's not really meant to figure it out. But it says, and Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite woman whose name was Shua. Shua. And then, where was it in Chronicles? Bathsheba is called the daughter of Shua. And David, who's of the line of Judah, sees a certain woman bathing, Bathsheba, just like Judah sees this daughter of Shua. So he marries her and goes into her, and she conceives and bears him a son. And then she bears him 3 sons. The first 2 die, and then Shelah, his son. He promises to Tamar. He doesn't give her to him. Then Tamar pretends to be a harlot. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Judah's wife died. Judah was comforted and went up with his sheep shearers at Timnah, which is the place where Samson goes at one point too. You know that whole story going on with like harlotry and things too. Anyways, she pretends to be a harlot. She covers her face, covers her head, so Judah doesn't really recognize her. He sleeps with her, and then eventually says, "She has been more righteous than I, um, because I did not give her to Shelah my son, and he never knew her again." And so through her, she gives birth to twins, Perez and Barah, which eventually, like David, comes through that line. Yeah, which is this one came out first, and the second one, well, he breaks through and comes out first. Perez, I don't know. Um, yeah, it's always kind of interested me is her name means palm tree. At least I think, yeah, and so even the temple, it's dedicated. I mean, it's decorated. Sorry, decorated. Getting too tired. Decorated with palm trees and like the cherubim, and so I think that word is similar to her name, Tamar. And in Psalms it says, "The righteous shall flourish like a palm tree." It's kind of palm tree seems to be associated with righteousness and uprightness, standing upright. So um, I'm not sure what to do with that. Other than that, um, Judah in that moment, I guess, recognizes his unrighteousness, his need. I don't know. I don't know the pattern of that, but the stranger get incorporated through that because I guess she's a Canaanite woman. I don't know that that Tamar was, but he married the daughter of Shua, which is kind of like because I was wondering if Bathsheba, if she was a Hittite, because she's married to Uriah the Hittite. So I didn't know if she herself was a Hittite. But then when I was reading that thing in Ezekiel 16, that's what made me curious. He says, "Your mother was a Hittite. Your daughter, yeah, your mother was a Hittite. Your father was an Amorite." I don't know. I could read Ezekiel. Where was it? Ezekiel 2 also seems like an incredibly important pattern in terms of how stories go. The two harlot sisters. Where is it? Um, not there. Not there. There. Two harlot sisters. Ezekiel 23. Um, Son of man, there were two women, the daughters of one mother. They committed harlotry in Egypt. They committed harlotry in their youth. Their breasts were their embrace, virgin wombs were pressed. Their names, Ohala the elder, and Oholibah her sister, the older and the younger. They were mine, and they bore sons and daughters. As for their names, Samaria was Ohala, and Jerusalem Oholibah. So you have a pattern with the older and the younger sister happening there in the because I mean you could kind of see that pattern with like I mean, I don't know if that happens with Rachel and Leah, um, but you could maybe kind of see it a little bit with Vashti. No, I don't know if that works either. But you have Vashti and Esther, which two characters there, like two queens. They're not really sisters though. But you have an older and younger. I mean, you do have that with Israel and Judah. You could argue you have that with maybe Israel in the church, kind of the church kind of being like a younger sister that ended up committing more harlotry. I don't know. All right, be right back. Hey,
Hey, you're right.
how's it going?
Not bad. Just woke up not too long ago. Had you on while I was doing my devotion, and then I'll jump on.
Oh, nice. Thanks for putting on, man. It's been kind of excruciating.
I can imagine.
Yeah, just sitting here not knowing what to talk about. I probably just should have just read silently, but oh man, I don't know.
No, I think it
What?
was helpful to listen to you, ramble out, find connections, and say, "Oh, where was that connection?" It was. I found this evening.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad something happened. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Don't have Jacob here, so it's kind of just scattered. But I kind of wanted to at least try to do it because I think it's I don't know. I've just had a long day, and then I was just like, man, I just want to get into
Right.
the Bible at least a little bit, do some sort of devotion. But you said you just woke up. Is it like morning where you are, or did you sleep?
It's 5:24 a.m. I woke up like an hour ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. Wait. So where are you located?
England,
Oh, okay.
Manchester, but moving to London next week. So
Wow. So why are you up that early? Like,
I'm always up early. It's um I I find it easier to get things done while everyone else is asleep and the world hasn't woken up yet before things become too overwhelming.
makes sense.
Yeah, I went back to the start to try to see what you were reading from. Was it 2 Chronicles that you were reading from?
Which part? Like I said, I bounced all over. Um, the part about the mountain, the Mount of Olives. Is that what you meant? Or
Yeah,
that was actually in Kings when I was talking
Kings.
about that Yosef was talking to me about. It was this weird where let's see, it was Second Kings 23 verse 13, and it's like when it's talking about Messiah. And the mountain that Solomon corrupted, was that the verse you were
Yeah,
looking for?
and you were
Yeah.
talking about linking it to the blood of the martyrs at some point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was the verse like where
Sorry, where was it
uh
again? Second
uh
Kings.
Second Kings 23. Yeah, I was quoting verse 13. That may have been that one. Well, the reason I brought that one up is because it says that was a mountain that was east of Jerusalem, and it says uh on the south of the Mount of Corruption, and so that's why I was like, I didn't know if there was something going on. There was a play between the Mount of Olives and this Mount of Corruption. Um, and then Joseph said that there actually is something going on like that. There's like a pun happening. Because in Zechariah 14 verse 4 was where it says that the Mount of Olives is east of Jerusalem. Um, so I don't know. I hadn't looked up like the actual Hebrews to see if there why there's that pun going on, but that's what Joseph had told me. So I don't know the connection. I guess the connection I was making was that yeah, I was just kind of saying that the the city of God can easily kind of part of Babylon when they fall into corruption or something.
Yeah, and you said a phrase a couple times, something like the Christ and the Antichrist are heads breadth away.
Yeah. The friend, do you know Luke Thompson? He's sometimes around.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
spoken to him
Yeah,
while around.
he says that a lot. I'm kind of quoting him when he says that. Yeah, because I mean, that's what it seems to me. It seems that, and that's what I was saying about in the city. The city is kind of a lot of times the feminine aspect is like the virgin daughter, the virgin city of Jerusalem or something like that, or the virgin daughter of Israel. It's kind of like the city of God. But then you have the virgin daughter of Babylon or something like that. So you have this, you have harlot Babylon, and then you have the virgin Jerusalem, and it's just kind of like when God. That's when I was referencing Ezekiel chapter 16, because God takes his virgin and adorns her with all these precious ornaments, and then once she's exalted, her heart is lifted up, and then she uh, gets corrupted by like pride and falls into harlotry and things like that.
Don't remember that doesn't even ring a bell. What is Ezekiel?
Ezekiel 16. Yeah. Let's see. Let me see. I mean, I could read through it. It's a long chapter. I think I read the whole chapter on Jacob's channel once before, but it's probably one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible. So it says, what do you say? Let's go. You want me to read it?
Yes,
okay, I can. All right. Again, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, cause Jerusalem to know her abominations, and say, Thus says the Lord God to Jerusalem, Your birth and your nativity are from the land of Canaan. Your father was an Amorite, and your mother a Hittite. As for your nativity, on the day you were born, your navel cord was not cut, nor were you washed with water to cleanse you. You were not troubled. You were not rubbed with salt, nor wrapped in swaddling clothes. No, I pitied you to do any of these things for you, to have compassion on you. But you were thrown out into the open field when you yourself were loathed on the day you were born. And when I passed by you, I saw you struggling in your own blood. I said to you in your blood, live. Yes, I said to you in your blood, live. I made you thrive like a plant in the field, and you grew, matured, and became very beautiful. Your breasts were formed, your hair grew, but you were naked and bare. When I passed by you again, I looked upon you, and indeed, your time was time of love. So I spread my wing over you and covered your nakedness. Yes, I swore an oath to you and entered into a covenant with you, and you became mine, says the Lord. Then I washed you in water. Yes, I thoroughly washed off your blood, and I anointed you with oil. I clothed you with embroidered cloth and gave you sandals and badger skin. I clothed you with fine linen and covered you with silk. I adorned you with ornaments, put bracelets on your wrists and a chain on your neck, and I put a jewel in your nose, earrings in your ears, and a beautiful crown on your head. Thus you were adorned with gold and silver, and your clothing of fine linen and silk and embroidered cloth. You ate pastry of fine flour, honey, and oil. You were exceedingly beautiful and succeeded to all royalty. Your fame went out among the nations because of your beauty, for it was perfect through my splendor, which I had bestowed upon you, says the Lord God. But you trusted in your own beauty, played the harlot because of your fame, and poured out your harlotry on everyone passing by who would have it. You took some of your garments and adorned multicolored high places for yourself and played the harlot on them. Such things should not happen nor be. You have also taken your beautiful jewelry and my gold and my silver, which I had given you, and made for yourself male images and played the harlot with them. You took your embroidered garments and covered them. You set my oil and my incense before them, also my food which I gave you, the pastry, fine flour, oil, and honey which I fed you. You set it before them as sweet incense, and so it was, says the Lord God. Moreover, you took your sons and your daughters, whom you bore to me, and these you sacrificed to them to be devoured. Were your acts of harlotry a small matter, that you have slain my children and offered them up to them by causing them to pass through the fire? And in all your abominations and acts of harlotry, you did not remember the days of your youth, when you were naked and bare, struggling in your own blood. Hey, Hezzy.
Good morning, guys.
Morning. I'm just reading Ezekiel 16. Then it was so, after all your wickedness, woe, woe, woe to you, says the Lord God, that you also built for yourself a shrine and a high place for yourself in every street. You built your high places at the head of every road and made your beauty to be abhorred. You offered yourselves to everyone who passed by and multiplied your acts of harlotry. You also committed harlotry with the Egyptians, your very fleshy neighbors, and increased your acts of harlotry to provoke me to anger. Behold, therefore, I stretched out my hand against you to diminish your allotment and gave you up to the will of those who hate you, the daughters of the Philistines who were ashamed of your lewd behavior. You also played the harlot with the Assyrians because you were insatiable. Indeed, you played the harlot with them and were not satisfied. Moreover, you multiplied your acts of harlotry as far as the land of the traitor Chaldea, and even then you were not satisfied. How degenerate is your heart, says the Lord, seeing you do all these deeds, the deeds of a brazen harlot. So I can keep, chapters longer than that. I can keep going. Do you have anything you wanted to say, Hezzy?
Well, I'm jumping on here. I wasn't listening to the last hour since I wrote last. But continuing with the theme you were discussing earlier. So I mean, yes, a lot of this has to do with Israel breaking its covenant with God, and the whole idea of the intermarriage and the idolatry, or specifically the idolatry that comes with the intermarriage. Like we were saying earlier, that Bilam was aware that while I won't be able to curse the Israelites on the outside because they're protected, if I let them at their own accord destroy themselves from the inside, that I could do. Right? Like I can't come from the outside because God's protecting them. But if I bring in these women like the Delilah, it seems like they have a very hard time controlling themselves with regards to, and you see this also again with Solomon, who brought in the Egyptian princess, and also couldn't, while she brought in idol worship into the temple. Now, Solomon was saying like, yeah, like I get it, like that's like a lower level of worship, like I'm trying to create some sort of unity over here. But there again, like it was an example of the Israelite bringing in the unholy into its midst. Now, I want to preface that when I say unholy, excuse me, guys, 1 minute.
He's gone. Do you have any thoughts?
I was just thinking about as Ezzy was speaking, the prostitute or the women outside of the town in one of the Proverbs. I think it's Proverbs 9. Was it 7?
Oh,
And just
go there.
yeah, it's Proverbs 7. Trying to see where to pick it up from. One day, starting from verse 6. So one day I was at home standing by a window. I looked out through the shutters and I saw some foolish teenagers. I noticed one of them had no sense at all. Walking along, he came to a corner and followed a path leading to a sinful woman's house. The sun had set and the daylight was fading. It was almost dark. The woman came out to meet him, dressed like a prostitute. She clearly had plans for him. She was a wild and rebellious woman who would not stay at home. She walked the streets, always looking for someone to trap. She grabbed the young man and kissed him. Without shame, she looked him in the eye and said, I offered a fellowship offering today. I gave what I promised to give, and I still have plenty of food left. So I came out to find you, and here you are. I have cleaned my sheets on my bed, special ones from Egypt. My bed smells wonderful with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's enjoy ourselves all night. We can make love until dawn. My husband has gone on a business trip. He took enough money for a long trip. I won't be home for 2 weeks. This is what the woman said to tempt the young man, and her smooth words tricked him. He followed her like a bull being led to the slaughter. He was like a deer walking into a trap. Where hunters wait to shoot an arrow through its heart, the boy was like a bird flying to a net, never seeing the danger it was in. Now, sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Don't let your heart lead you to an evil woman like that. Don't go where she wants to lead you. She has brought down some of the most powerful men. She has left many dead bodies in her path. Her house is the place of death. The road to it leads straight to the grave.
Dang. It's intense.
Yeah.
It's a good proverb.
Ezekiel 16 is, as we read it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. This is some beautiful, beautiful scripture.
Mm.
And like God speaking in poetry about his relationship with Israel.
Yeah.
That's something I'll be going over a lot today. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. It definitely changed my theology quite a bit. Reading Ezekiel 16.
What was it before? What did it change to?
Well, I don't know. I guess it just like I kind of mentioned that earlier a little bit. That chapter specifically, Ezekiel 16, and kind of along with Romans 11, have kind of led me to be, I guess, what you would call universalist, believe like ultimate reconciliation. not that I don't, because I know sometimes people say universalist and that people think that means you don't believe in hell, but I do believe in hell. I just ultimately think it's maybe more like a purgatory type thing, rather than hell, because of that chapter, basically, because it says later on that because Israel kind of knew better, God showed them more, revealed more to them, kind of made a covenant with them, and they played the harlot, that their sister Sodom is now justified by their own deeds.
Yeah.
Which, and that kind of, I don't know, that still kind of gets me every time. I guess some people could argue, well, I mean, it's just poetry. It's just making a point, and I'm like, well, that the poetry seems to almost be more profound to me than like anything else. And the fact that it's called their sister, there's still a connection. Like,
Yeah.
it's like she's still family if you trace the bloodline all the way back to the first man, Adam. It's like you're not necessarily disconnected from that nation. I don't know.
Samaria seem good compared to you.
Yeah. So that verse where it says, basically, you have justified your sisters by the abominations you have done. Like, you've done more wickedly than them. And then the Romans 11 where it says, like, for you were once disobedient to God, yet now have obtained mercy through their disobedience. Even so, these also have now been disobedient, that through the mercy shown you, they also may obtain mercy. For God has committed them all to disobedience, that he might have mercy on all. So just kind of like, it kind of, I guess, started to click, like, okay, so this, when the harlot, I guess in this story you could say Israel, or like, or even the church or anybody, when they repent, they before God receive forgiveness. And then, like, Jesus told that one harlot that came to his feet, he said, your sins are forgiven you. And then he said, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loves much, for he who is forgiven much loves much. And so, like, through the mercy shown her, she's able to have more mercy that goes out to, like, more people, and it's like this, like, I don't know how to describe it other than, like, I usually use the term perpetual mercy machine or something like that, and it just kind of keeps redeeming things. And so that's where that chapter specifically kind of really changed my theology a lot, but for those reasons. He's back.
Hey, sorry about that.
Hi.
So yeah, so I was saying that dealing with the foreign woman, or the feminine, well, more the foreign woman is saying that the Israelites are tried and tried with again, and they always seem to have an issue with that. There is a harlot that is actually there isn't such an issue with, which is Rahab, when Joshua is coming into the land. So she actually ends up being a cool cat. So that ended up working well. But generally speaking, that is really where the Israelite falls time and time again with idol worship, which is the issue with the covenant, right? Because we're supposed to be to God and to God alone. And the prophet talks about how we move from husband, which is like Baali, as in like with ownership over me, which is like a certain level of the covenant, to later on Ishi, as in like more as a husband, as an equal, and not as like as like we're doing that together with God, combined with God, which is sort of the relationship that he wants us to have with him. The story of Delilah always perplexed me, that like he just keeps on getting it wrong, but in a certain way, the story of Samson is sort of the whole story of Judges, which is like we do well, then we go back to it. We constantly end up going back to it. And only when like Samson is standing, blind in the temple of the Philistines and like tells God, just remember me this once, right? And God gives him back his strength to take down the tower with him. But again, it collapses on top of it, right? So like in a certain way, it was just a realization that it was sort of a failed triumph in a certain way. because it still resulted in the judge being, dying at the end of the day and not really managing to fulfill his destiny properly. And even with the judge Gideon, he also, we know that he was idol worshiping, and then God appears to him in the grove, I believe. So we're always having this dance, even with the golden calf, right? Like right after the ascension. I mean, then when Moses goes up, we managed to not be able to handle that. However, you're reading about the Assyrians also, Jason, and the Egyptians there, like where you could see that again we transgressed. Ultimately, at the end of days, God sees even the Egyptian and the Assyrian as his creation and his people. He also uses the terminology, my people, Egypt, my people,
Isaiah.
and Assyria. Right, exactly. So I mean, if you could whip up Isaiah what's in 40, Isaiah 40. I think it also relates to Israel in the feminine. But in Judaism, in the summer we read in synagogue after the Torah portion reading. The Torah portion reading. Yeah, we also read a chapter or two from the prophets. And there's a few weeks where we read all the destruction and exile prophecies, which are very dark times. But ultimately, at the end, we read Isaiah 40. So hit us.
Read the whole thing. I can do it.
I mean, it's just a few lines. I
Okay.
think we should be
All right.
covered.
Comfort. Let's see. Comfort, yes, comfort my people, says your God. Speak comfort to Jerusalem and cry out to her that her warfare has ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill brought low. The crooked places shall be made straight, and the rough places smooth. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. The voice
I think
that cry
that's.
out.
I mean, you can keep on going. All good.
Yeah.
But
No, that's right.
the point was being just like, also you were talking about desert, midbar, and also Aseret HaDibrot, which are the 10 commandments or the 10 utterances. And here you could also see that that first of all, that ultimately even the quote unquote harlot ends up finding her redemption, right? God says, it's time to come back, and she comes back again through the desert, because in this desert, she gets to, straighten herself out again, come back to the source, move away, get rid of all, create a highway and get rid of all those rugged elements onto her, and remanifest. So, I mean, this is what we read, which is in Hebrew, comfort is nachamu, and nechama is called a comfort. So this is known as the Sabbath of comfort, Shabbat nachamu. And in general, like in the synagogue, in the community, the attitude is we're leaving the exile portion and we're going into quote unquote brighter days. And, this is post the fasts of the destruction of the temple. And during these times, so during the 3 weeks, it's called, we don't listen to live music. We don't have weddings. We don't go to concerts. And the idea is, and then specifically within Jewish law, there's like, what's live music? Can you listen to a cappella? Can you listen to a cappella singing? So, Jews find their way to make these things happen at the end of the day. So and then there in the 3 weeks, there's the 9 days, which are more intense. And then some people are more strict about those 9 days. For example, my family goes on to a vacation, all of us together, my siblings up north. And if it falls under 3 weeks, my mom always sends out a note saying oh, maybe we don't have to have music by the pool. And my brother, that's a rabbi, writes back Mom, it's not live music. It's not a problem. And she's at the temple. So it's always fun swimming with your nephews and seeing your mom on the side, reading Psalms because she thinks we're all sinning. So, yeah. So I think what you're saying. Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Oh no, isn't that Nahama, the comfort? Is that Noah's wife's name?
I didn't hear you say.
Noah in Genesis, his wife's name. I heard somewhere that I thought his wife's name was.
Oh,
the same
no,
word.
her name is Ne'amah,
Okay.
not
That's
Nechama.
not the same.
It's with it's a different spelling, different word.
Okay.
Ne'amah would come in Hebrew. It means like nice, na'im,
Oh.
pleasant.
Okay.
There's Nechama on this Discord. Her name is
Yeah.
Nechama, and her name relates to that verse
Isaiah.
or that concept.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up. That's kind of what I was saying too. Like that's when I was saying earlier that I've said this multiple times that they're all the same Mary, like the Virgin Mary is Mary Magdalene, the whore, like they're all the same, because it's kind of this. I mean, it's like the same in the book of that Ezekiel 16, like I was talking about. Like she starts out as a virgin, then God adorns her with all these precious garments and everything, and then her heart's lifted up and she falls into harlotry, and then the harlot's redeemed in the end. And even in the Gospels, it's like you have Mary, this virgin figure, and then later you have this Mary, another Mary, who's this harlot figure, weeping at Jesus' feet, and then he says her sins are forgiven, and then you have Mary Magdalene. I mean, to me they're all the same Mary anyway, but it's then you have Mary again at tomb, which is another womb, and then there's a resurrection, and so it's like this.
I mean, the resurrection would be akin to what you just read in Isaiah, right? Which is coming back, returning, being revived. So I would agree with you that, like, this is very symbolic, obviously, of like that relationship, and those are definitely the terminology that's used a lot between like God and its bride. I mean, even Mary as the virgin, I'm not getting into the authenticity about that. Just the concept of that, the concept of a virgin, even having like a virgin birth, being like this is a holy conception. I'm putting aside, like, let's say it isn't really literally a virgin birth. The concept of a virgin birth is what really you want to be adopting. So I'd say like less the stress of like, is that physically possible, and more the stress about like, is that what we want to achieve, or is that the mindset we want to be in when something like that is happening? Because even in the Talmud, it says there are three that are dependent for, three that are responsible for the human being, the mother, the father, and God. And God, like, you rest between them. But the idea is three become one in a certain sense, which I see that, resonating with some of the Christians. It's not, I guess it's not like in a material, literal sense, but it's more in like a conceptual, spiritual sense. That if all three are, if the mother and father are oriented, going back to Adam, right? That like they became one flesh, right? Or a man leaves his wife and leaves his house and becomes one flesh. So there's like that one, and then there's that unification with God, which also is still one, which allows in the creation of a human being. Right, so you have there's still this one person that's happening throughout these all stuff. So that to me resonates like a little more, but I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes. Maybe she did have a magic
perfect
baby.
Sense to me. That's how I would understand it as well. And that's like, I think what Jesus says, what God had joined together, let no man separate, type thing. Like when you have the two. Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying, Teo?
Unity in multiplicity is what.
Exactly. Correct.
Yeah.
Unity and multiplicity. That would be precise. That's the attitude. And again, just as far as the harlot, or like, God adorned her with all these gifts, and then she keeps on transgressing. But I would say post golden calf, which is like a major transgression, the relationship also changes then between God and Israel. In a certain way, it's as if God realizes, and like you see this. I know these are hard terms to use. You see this every now and then in the Bible, like when God finds Abraham, right? It's as if like God was just browsing on like his Instagram. He's like, holy crap, look at this guy. He's like, this is the guy I was talking about. Right. He's like showing the angels. He's like, you guys are gonna love this guy. Look at this guy. Look how many views he has. So And like God sees that and he's like impressed by that. But like, you have to imagine like, he's sort of searching, he's sort of looking around, right?
Uh-huh.
And then when Moses comes and there's a golden calf, right? He's like, F this. He's like, I'm done with these guys. Let's start again from you. You're a great dude. And this is also in a certain way where like God is forced, like, or when we say that the God's word is divine, it's almost, it doesn't really matter in a certain sense if God said these words or not. It's Moses goes back to God and says, like, listen, remember what you told Abraham and Isaac? Like, this is happening, bro. You made words. There's been commitments. Like, I'm getting rid of these people right now. And God's like, you're right. Like, yes, that was what we discussed. Now, you could be like, there's another level of interpretation over there that he was, like, testing Moses. But the point being, it's sort of like, yes, God is going to be involved still, but it's not going to be like, I let them see my face, right? I came to speak to them from Mount Sinai. And, like, they couldn't handle it. So, like, if you're getting the full 9 yards of God, it comes with a huge sense of responsibility. Like, if you mess up, it's like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. I'm sorry, you get chucked out. And if you don't want to get chucked out, then you can't see me fully. You won't be able to have that relationship then, because like it's too intense. So I mean, I think again, like we have this relationship where it's just very confused. We have to then start hearing it through the prophets and start hearing these voices, and then be told by the prophets that like God didn't even, like he never told our forefathers he wanted any sacrifices, right? And then you have these old books about the sacrifices, how much sacrifice, how many, how much blood are you going to pour, all these details. And God's like, that's all like, it's white noise. That's like not what I was looking for necessarily. But that confusion comes from that separation, because like we keep on, or the Israelite, historically speaking, keep on dipping their water into the unholy, or, I don't want to use unholy, but like the wrong channel. When God says, like, I'm giving you AM, I'm giving you FM, and you keep on searching on this thing and listening to like this random music where I'm telling you, I'm giving you the clearest music. And, I think as we get, Jacob shared this thing on Discord. I think it was Jacob, or someone shared it about this. In Dubai, they made like this huge center of like this massive synagogue and this church and this mosque, and it's all together. So that seems to me like people starting to write more similar music notes. People are getting closer towards writing a symphony that makes more sense, which again stresses on the Jews, the dietary restrictions, what food, like, just because there's a concept of separation. There's a concept of, and not separation because the other is bad, but it's to realize how to orient yourself properly and like mix yourself up with all these different things. Which again, it's, when post-exile, when the Israelites come back to Israel, or when Ezra and Nehemiah, when Ezra brings with him the Levites and he comes back from Babylon and he comes over here, Ezra's is compared to Moses also, because he basically reinstated the Torah to the Jewish people. And he reads out, there's a whole, dramatic scene. He reads out from the Torah scrolls, which they didn't even see. They don't know Hebrew. They start crying. We totally forgot about all these stuff. We forgot about the Sukkot holiday. Clearly, they're not even keeping the Sabbath. The Jews are in a very bad place. There's only very few that are aware of that. And they differentiate between the seed of Israel and the sons of Israel. As in, there's people that are culturally, they see themselves still as like the Israelites, but there's like the clergy that still, they were extremely careful about like intermarriage, and they call themselves the seed of Israel. And after Ezra does his whole shindig, some people come out to him and call out and say, like, we still have this huge issue with intermarriage. Like, we're marrying, like, everyone's married right now to everyone. And like, he breaks down and cries. Like, that's his response. He's overwhelmed. He's like, I didn't know it was this bad. And that is very similar to sort of the silence that Moses has when he sees when he sees in the camp the Cosby and the Midianite woman, and they're sleeping together, and people ask him like, "What do we do?" Right, like the priest of not the priest, the head of the Simeon camp is doing this right now. How to respond to this? And Moses is silent, right? He doesn't say anything, and in comes Pinchas, and he with his lance, and he kills them both. And his answer is like, "This is what needed to happen. Like I answered for you, Moses." And in the story of Ezra here too, Ezra's sort of silent. He just cries. He doesn't know what to do. He's overwhelmed. And comes one of the individual and pulls. He does like he mimics that pattern. I forgot what his name is though. It's some random name. But he comes and he declares, "We're all gonna leave our wives. Like we're gonna separate." That's like a metaphorical lance. He's saying like we're ending these relationships. And it's sort of both Moses and Ezra. It needs to come from the people. Like I can't go that final line for you and tell you like, so now separate these people. Like it needs to come from within the people that they realize that this is unholy. We've gone too far. Like if so that separation happens, and then later on in the story, Ezra like has a decree that we're gonna leave. All men have to leave. Basically, you have to separate from your foreign wives. And like it's raining outside, and they come out to the streets, and they're saying like, "Listen, like we need more time. Like we can't just like dump our wives like tomorrow. It needs like more of this needs to be drawn out a little more." Sages go back and forth. Did that end up happening? Like, did those couples end up separating or not? Or from then on, were they more careful about that? But either way, Ezra at that point decides like there's no intermarriage at all across the board. Earlier, there were only a few nations that the Israelites weren't allowed to marry with, but he decides like it's clearly too confusing. And
the borders.
Exactly, and the Talmud goes back and forth on during Ezra's time. He basically created a lot more fences, and slowly he removed those fences. But basically, like he had to really be a lot more strict on like the population at the time. But again, you could see that pattern repeats itself, like again from all the way from Moses till again with Ezra over here again, which is always fascinating to see how deep and beautiful our Bible is.
Yeah,
those are my thoughts.
No, those are really good thoughts. It's incredibly interesting to me. It's just I just still wonder about how to incorporate the stranger, because that seems to be like a big theme. When I asked Joseph about it, he said that's a big theme in Judaism as well. I think it a lot of times within the line of Judah, and I don't know what's the distinction between taking life like Rahab or something like that, and then Solomon taking these other wives. Like what is and things like Delilah, things like that. Like when does it? I'm trying to think of, and even all the pagan wives. Like why did they have to separate? Like what? Does that question even make sense? I'm not quite sure because I feel like the goal kind of is ultimately to kind of incorporate the stranger still, like you had maintain this distinction, because like the unity is not uniformity. So even within Judaism having these dietary restrictions, there still is a distinction between like this, I guess what you could call holy seed. Like you said, I don't know if that might offend some people to say that, but that doesn't to me. But like, holy being set apart, like there's an exclusion, but still, I don't know.
So where is it? Ruth. It's the first chapter of Ruth, I think 17 or 16. Can you read that for us? I mean, I guess I can pick it up too. But
wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge,
exactly.
I will lodge.
No, yeah, and then
your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. And wherever
so
you die, I will die.
The foreigner comes in when they see themselves no longer as a foreigner, right? So like, there's nothing wrong with the foreigner coming. More than that, there's something beautiful at the foreigner, because those are droplets of which gets like the Noahide movement would be like a larger version of like the floodgates opening up, where more of the foreigner comes in. There's a very big tension over there with with David when the prophet comes to Jesse and he's like, so one of your boys is going to be the king, right?
Mhm.
And Jesse shows him all the kids, and he's like, this is it. And in Hebrew, the language used is Shivat Banai, like my 7 sons, as in, and I have no more sons. Because they didn't even see at the time, like David potentially maybe coming from Ruth, from like a different marriage. Maybe he's not even considered Jewish at the time.
Oh.
And that also relates to, and then the prophet tells him, like, no, there's another son, bro. And he's like, oh, yeah, we do have another. There's another boy. But he's like, you must not mean him because he's not pure blood. And even when you hear David pray to God, he says, my mother and father have left me, and God has lifted me up. Because that's relating to, like, even my mother and father saw me as different from them. So, so yes, there is integration, and you could see Solomon trying to do that as well. But Solomon doesn't do it like Ruth, right? Solomon, he's like, listen, I'm the flipping wisest man in the world. I fully understand all these different levels of interpretation, and I know that this woman bowing down to Ra, the sun god, it really means God. Like, she's just like, that's like her level of interpretation.
Okay.
Ironically, that is in a certain way what Judaism thinks today about other religions, as in, like, they could practice their other religion alongside if they recognize the source, right? So during the time of Solomon, though, that wasn't done. Like, that's great, Solomon, but people are not at that level of abstraction yet. Like, they can't be doing that. So that would be like a improper or a combination. Same thing with Delilah. He can't, like, this is clearly bad news bears. You would think he's like, honey, I just feel like every night when I go to sleep, it seems like I wake up and someone's trying to kill me. And I really feel like that's, like, related to you because I only give you my secrets. She had a serious attitude. She's like, and then like complaining to him, like, it's not cool, bro. You're never telling me the truth about how to kill you. He's like, you're right. It's kryptonite.
I love that story so much.
Yeah, for sure. I have a question about
sure.
Is why David rides a mule because he's kind of seen as mixed or could be mixed?
Well, the mule in general is supposed to be like the mundane, the materialistic, the earthly sort of combination, which would be, again, like riding that. It's not exactly like this, but even when Jacob likes talking about the evil inclination, when with Cain and Abel, and says, and you will rule it, right? About Tatim Shobo. And the sages say, like, you will ride it, as in, like, you got to fasten this negative energy and reorient it towards good, and then, like, and have control over it. So here too, when Messiah comes in, he is riding the materialistic world.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to dominate the conversation. Do you have any questions?
You're not dominating the conversation. We're
no.
Sharing
okay.
thoughts.
Okay. No. I know. I just didn't want to, like, keep asking questions if he had one for you or not.
No, please keep going.
Sorry. Okay. Because I have some questions pop up in my head when you were talking. So you mentioned, like, it's properly done when you mentioned Ruth, in that she no longer saw herself as just a stranger, the foreigner. It was like she kind of was dedicated or something. I'm one of your people. Wherever you go, I go. Wherever you lodge, I lodge. Your people are my people. Your God is my God. Even to the point of death.
It's almost like the response that the Israelites give God in Mount Sinai, like, we will do and we will hear, right? Like, I don't need any, you don't have to give me any, like, I'm in, I'm committed. And that is, like, sort of the level of commitment that God wants to see. And then you're no longer the foreigner. Then you're back to the source.
Okay. Yeah. So here's something, and we don't have to go down this because I know I kind of touched on this a little bit last time I spoke to you, and I realized it's probably a point of way more contention where you are rather than where I am. But I didn't know if this was somewhat related to the idea of head coverings as strictly metaphorical sense, as in, like, relation to identity.
You mean like women head covering or men head, like skull cap?
Well, either one, I guess, because okay, because my thought is like when I brought it up before, I was like, there seems to be like you can either you have tradition or something like head coverings. So like you can if you're very oppressive about that tradition, you lose the symbolism in it because people are just oppressed by it. Like
Yeah, I remember this
certain-
conversation.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, and so but then if you just throw it out, you lose the symbolism as well. But to me, I thought the symbolism has to do with something like identity because you have the harlot going to Judah and she covers her head so that way she's hiding her identity. Like people rob a liquor store and they put their head up. They don't want to be recognized. So you're kind of like concealing your identity. Like when the sun's hot, you want a cloud to kind of conceal you from the heat of the sun or something like
Mm.
that. So I didn't know if this maybe is somehow related into that because you have this identity in like head coverings, and so you're kind of I don't know what I'm doing with it. I just didn't know if it'd be worth exploring that idea or if that's kind of too much of a touchy subject or something like that. Because the idea with the Ruth and being dedicated, I guess under God, like properly identifying with the true husband, you say the true God, the one true husband of all creation or something like that.
Okay, so there are differences between the types of head covers, and
Mhm.
this. I mean, we learned this from let's say with males, right? It's really just about a tool to remind yourself that there's someone above you.
Okay.
Right, so like while today you're identified as Jew by having on that marker, traditionally speaking, people didn't walk around wearing that skull cap unless they were in prayer, which would be like the proper garb you'd wear during orientation, and that's something you put on your head to remind you that there's something on top of you. Later on, that became something that we do across the board, which is just like as far as being identified, like. The Syrian Jews and Jews that came from Ethiopia that were not that was not their custom, like the chief rabbinate in Israel, like came out with a decree that generation doesn't have to, and like they shouldn't be judged that way because that's just not what they're accustomed to doing. But that doesn't mean in any way that they're not part of the tribe, basically. With regards to women, which is a little more related, this is a modesty element. This is not to remind her that there's something above her. Rather, this is to remind her that excuse me. We have the woman that transgressed in the Torah, and it says that the high priest would expose her hair in the temple, and she drinks from the divine water that has God's name in it. And if she lied, she would die, and if she was telling the truth, it'd all work out well. But taking off the head cover is sort of exposing the transgression, right? Which is like you were married, which is like this, like you wrapped yourself up because your hair now, in a certain sense, is to your husband and to the covenant between you and him and between you and God. As in, this beauty, this body you have, is not just to be used randomly and with no purpose. It needs to be oriented properly. This goes all the way back to Bilam when he says that he looks at their camps, the encampment of the Israelites, and he sees they're properly oriented. And the sages say that the way the camps were set up, no tent was looking into another person's tent for privacy reasons, to make sure that they don't see each other because they realize how private that is. And that's a very big difference in Baal Peor, right? Which is like a very physical and pressed idol worship. So here too, I would say it's not, again, different from the male covering. It is really about concealing the intimate, and then. Religiously speaking, then the question is, can I recite the blessings? Can I pronounce God's name if I see exposed hair? And the idea is like, so what's the big deal? It's hair. The idea is like that hair is there, that beautiful hair God gave this person is there to be used as a vessel for divine sexual levels of expression. and those are not to be taken lightly and not to be just looked at lightly. So if I'm going to be thinking about God's name right now, do I want to be looking also at something that symbolizes something that is still divine, but like, not, and I don't want to say not holy, but not like, prayer is different than the sexual act, let's say. So hence that's needed. So again, I don't know if that's fully connected to what you were saying, though there are
Well, I
certain.
think so. The reason I'm interested too is because you have even as I think I'm more interested in the feminine aspect, like you're talking about, and the reason is because that's not necessarily separate from us when we get into things like religion. If Israel is the bride of God and all that stuff, and then if we are feminine in relationship to God, if that makes sense. So how the veiling and unveiling works is incredibly interesting to me. Even if, like I mentioned, the harlot sitting by the roadside with Judah, but then you also have Rebecca, who, when she goes to meet Isaac, like covers her face immediately, like covers her hair. And so you describing all this and how that even works is incredibly fascinating to me. And it reminds me of Song of Songs too, like her hair. It talks about the woman's hair in that as well. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying the story when she meets Isaac is a crazy story. We don't have to go down that route, but like she falls off the horse when she sees him. When the camel, I mean, they didn't really have camels there, so biblical criticism, but whatever they're riding, she falls off of when she sees him. And I mean, Jacob would hate this, so I'm sorry, Jacob. But after she comes, her and Isaac both go together to pay their respects for his mom that died. And this is the first time we see Isaac after the sacrifice. Right? There's a sacrifice attempt. Isaac disappears, and then he pops up. And if you look at the text, it says in a place called Be'er Lechi. I don't know how that's translated in English, but it would be the well of the living.
The well of the living. Okay.
I'm interested. A different well. I mean, again, there's sages that talk about these things, but tell me what it says over there, if you don't mind.
Isaac. Hold on, I'm trying to find it. Let's see. Okay, so wait, it says Be'er Lahai. It's Beerlahai. Be'er Lahai Roy, ROI.
Be'er Lahai Roy. Oh, but there's no they don't give it a different name in the English.
For he dwelt in the south. It might do that. I read New King James, so maybe in like King James they did. Let me find it really quick.
I prefer yours, right? Which would be more technically true, not like someone just deciding what the name of the place is. But that relates to like there was a tradition that sort of got like stomped out, that Abraham goes through with the sacrifice. And Isaac dies, but then comes back. And this like relates to like why Eliezer is giving pushback to Abraham, because he's like, what do you want me to go do? Find someone for your son? Like, you mean your son that died? Like, that's not here anymore? Like, that's why that whole interaction when he's telling him, go find a wife for my son. And then when she sees him, she falls off because she's like, this guy, like, I can't, like, he's like in this, he just pops out of nowhere in this place called like, the well of the living. And the first thing he does is go visit his mom, because like he wasn't there. He's not aware that his mom died. He's not aware of any of that. Whatever. This there's a whole that was basically sort of like wiped out of our tradition now. But there's books that discuss those that topic.
That's crazy. I've never heard any of that before. That's really cool.
But clearly it was very psychologically devastating for Isaac as well. What happened over there, or I don't know about devastating, but it definitely changed the kind of person. It changed the kind of person he was. Which, by the way, also in a certain way relates to, you had this question about. I mentioned, you wrote to me in the Discord about Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, and like them having like these different attributes, and like Judaism in the middle, but Isaac is the chariot of Din, of justice, right? Because to accept that kind of faith requires just like understanding that this is like the just decree of the Lord. Now it's successful because it says "Vayilchu shnehem yachdav." They went together. He went together with Abraham, which is the chariot of grace, of chesed. So doing those two together allowed him to survive that ordeal. However, both of them then are responsible for Jacob, and Jacob is supposed to be that middle ground. So because Christianity is seen through the chariot of Abraham, which is grace, and Islam is seen through the chariot of justice, which is Din, and Jacob is Tiferet, is the center, which is supposed to be back to the biblical verse, they both went together. It requires this combination of them to have proper orientation.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, that whole idea keeps popping back up in my head more and more because it seems incredibly true the more I think about it. But
the Zohar says, we say about Jacob that he's Ishtam. He was an Ishtam Yoshevo Alim. He was I don't know what the translation is in English, but he was like a tent dweller.
Okay, yeah.
And the Zohar says that means he would sit between the tent of Isaac and the tent of Jacob. He sat between both tents to be able to create that combination.
Wait, so Jacob was a tent dweller, right?
Jacob was the tent dweller, and the tents he's dwelling are the tent of Jacob, and the tent of Isaac, and the tent of Abraham.
Okay, all right, okay, that's what you said. You said the tent of Jacob, and I thought you.
Sorry.
Yeah. No,
my mistake.
That's interesting, man.
There's also just because you mentioned the well of Ishmael. So there's also like a very fascinating psychological interpretation of what's going on over there. So first of all, as a child, I had a very hard time with like, why is Abraham sending her out there? Like, what the hell? Like, here's some water and like, good luck. So
yeah.
It's clear to me that he sent her saying like, you're going to go and that, like 5 clicks north is that well. Like, I'm not sending you recklessly. Like, there's wells out there. Like, that. I'm not like sending you out to the desert to fend for yourself. You're going to take a left by Desert 3 and take a right by, Burning Bush X, and you're going to be where you need to be. So
exactly.
So also when the angel is talking to her, it's as if like sometimes we're in such a distressed time, we can't even see what's in front of us. Right. And we need like to be in this place where like, oh, the well was there the whole time. So I believe the well was there the whole time. It's not a miraculous well and she got lost. She was overwhelmed and she couldn't see that. And she sort of needed to be calmed to be able to see, like, relax for a second, take a breather, and you'll see that what you need is really right in front of you. That's number one, a little interpretation that you could see from our interaction. But what's interesting is that Ishmael's dying and she's like, I can't bear this. I can't bear to see this. Right. So you mind reading that?
Yeah.
But interesting, I think.
Let me find it really quick. Hagar and Ishmael depart. So the child grew and weaned, and Abraham made. So it's talking about it. Let's see. I'm not sure where to start. Let's see. And Sarah saw that the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, scoffing. Therefore she said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, namely with Isaac. And the matter was very displeasing in Abraham's sight because of his son. But God said to Abraham, do not let it be displeasing in your sight because of the lad or because of your bondwoman. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice, for in Isaac your seed shall be called. Yet I will also make a nation of the son of the bondwoman, because he is your seed. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and put it on her shoulder and gave it to the boy and gave it and the boy to Hagar and sent her away. Then she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba, and the water in the skin was used up, and she placed the boy under one of the shrubs. Then she went and sat down across from him a distance of about a bow shot. Where she
Okay,
said
so
to
1 second.
herself-
Stop there for a second.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's a strange line? She walked away from him. How? What's the distance they say?
A bow shot.
Like, what is that?
because-
She went away the distance of a bow shot. That's like how far she went away. Right now, skip to Ishmael survives. What does he grow up to be?
An archer.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
like and it's like few lines down. And my interpretation of that is the Torah is giving you like an example of how dramatic that was for Ishmael. And they're using how far was his mother? She was the distance of a bow shot. As in that, but that doesn't mean she disappeared. She was too far away for him. So you can imagine him calling out to his mother and realizing, I can't reach her. I can't reach her anymore. I'm alone. Now, when he grows up, there's nothing that's ever gonna get away from my reach. That was so traumatic for him that she was away from a bow shot that he grew up to be an archer. Like that's his response to that, which is like, I had this traumatic experience where I was calling out and I couldn't reach what I wanted to reach, even though I know it was there. I know she was there out in the ether. Like, I know she didn't disappear, she didn't die. I just couldn't reach her. And when I grow up, I'm always going to be able to reach my target.
Reach my target. So, okay, so does Islam come from the line of Ishmael?
Of course.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to tie this in. Because it seems like, okay, so if you have those two things, those two sides, Islam and Christianity, and Islam is more, what was the term you used? More justice or something? More, is that, oh, he left. Okay. I don't know if I should wait. I should probably wait till he comes back. Got a phone call. Oh, man. Tayo said, thank you for me doing that. That's so nice. Yeah, I'm really glad he joined. That was very nice of him because I was definitely struggling trying to do this by myself. Trying to keep it interesting at least. This gives me a little moment to kind of collect my thoughts, but hey. All right.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to, I'm not even sure how to ask this question. So you said nothing will be out of his reach, and Islam comes from the line of Ishmael.
Yeah.
And I was also like, I haven't thought about this nearly enough. I was just kind of trying to, I guess, play with the idea a little bit about the land where God leads you also kind of serves as a teacher in some way. So Ishmael in Islam is in some, at least in this story, is kind of in some desert land where they're thirsty and there's this traumatic experience, and then he has this and he doesn't want anything to be out of his reach. And in Israel, like the land's totally different. Like you have, it seems like you have deserts, you have mountains, you have rivers, all this stuff. Lots of different you can learn from. I'm not sure where I'm going with this anyway. So you have Islam on one side, Christianity on the other. And Islam, you said, what was that word you used? It's more like righteousness focus or something, right?
Justice.
Justice. So it's kind of like hitting the target, right?
Even religion in Arabic is another word for justice. Like for
So it's kind of about hitting the mark, right? Hitting the target.
It's about,
in a way.
Yeah, so I'm saying, so in we have chet, like sin, right, which is like missing the target, like not getting to the target. I would say, let's say if the target of Ishmael is to pronounce that God is one, God's name is one, he did a fantastic job around the world doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I guess I thought it was interesting because he becomes an archer, and so it's like nothing will be out of his reach or out of him being able to hit this thing. Yeah, and then Christianity on the other side is always kind of saying like, well, almost the opposite, basically. Well, I don't know that they're always saying that, but that's at least what I kind of gather. It's like we can't hit the target. Like we can't. Maybe not in saying not specifically in that one claim of like going down the rabbit trail of like saying God is one or something like that. But Christianity is always saying like, and I think it's kind of tension sometimes between Islam and Christianity is that Christianity maybe leans too far on the Hesed side or something. Getting back into that whole idea with Islam on one side, Christian on the other, and Judaism in the middle. Yeah, I don't know. That's just extremely fascinating. I guess where I was going with the whole wilderness thing is, I heard someone say this a long time ago. It was, I don't even know why they were saying this. Was they were saying in Islam, Hagar is cast out, and Ishmael has to grow up without a father. And there's something extremely significant about that as well. Oh, Andrew, what's up?
How's it going?
Hey,
Hello.
how are you doing?
Good. Day's winding down, so getting slower.
Yeah, that's good. I'm just, yeah, I didn't know. Were you watching at all, or did you just hop on?
I just hopped on, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, we were just talking about I was talking to Hezi, then he got a phone call, but we were talking about a story of Ishmael and Hagar, and he was saying how Hagar, she goes away from him. She thinks he's gonna die, so she walks away from Ishmael a bow shot, and then later after that, Ishmael becomes an archer. So as he was saying that experience, there's this idea that experience it was so traumatic for Ishmael that he then wanted, he became an archer because he wanted everything to be within his reach. Like he always wanted to be able to hit the target or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, though, where you had mentioned the idea of like you have Islam on one side and Christianity on the other, and Judaism in the middle, where like Islam is very more like righteousness focused or something like that, and there's like what's the two terms? It's like Hesed is on one side, and I think justice, divine justice or something is on the other side, and then you need both of them to go together or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and he was saying, so I was just kind of thinking about that, like if Ishmael always wanted to be able to hit the mark or hit the target, nothing out of his reach, it seems very almost more the lines of justice centered, whereas Christianity is always like, yeah, you can't hit the, it's like, that's so important. Like, so it kind of seems like that rings true, but I don't know. That's just where my mind was going right now. But do you got any thoughts on that, or on anything else?
I mean, there's this notion of like pinning things, like King Saul wants to, I think he wants to like stab David with a spear. He wants to pin him down.
Yeah.
And then archery is just like doing that at a distance, Yeah,
that's true.
I think, I mean, you see that repeated in crucifixion. And I think in icons of the slaughter of the innocents, they always make mention of some sort of spear or something. Let me try pulling it up.
Oh, yeah. I haven't even seen that.
Yeah.
Can you share screen? Yeah.
Sure. Let me see. Yeah. Present. Share screen.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. At the stream. Sweet. Oh, wow. Yeah, I haven't seen it at all.
You kind of see more of this in like the Coptic tradition, because like the flight into Egypt is kind of important for us. So,
Wait, say more about that. Right.
Yeah. Let me pull up the icon for it.
That one icon there looks like Jesus around a bunch of little sunflowers.
Yeah, this one, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm guessing those are little halos. I don't know.
Uh-huh. Yeah. people are always arguing about like, where do infants go at when they die? And I'm like, I don't know. Have you seen this? Have you seen this icon?
There they are. All those
Yeah.
little sunflowers.
Yep.
I have never seen that one before. That's cool.
Yeah. Get a copy cut.
The flight into Egypt.
It's interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting
Yeah.
how like Christ goes on a donkey into Egypt, and he also goes on a donkey into Jerusalem. I know some
It
look
is.
into that. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Can you say more about that or no?
No, I don't think I can.
Okay. I mean, it is really interesting. I just didn't know. I'm not sure what to do with that yet. That's really donkey into Egypt and donkey into Jerusalem. Yeah, it's always. I always kind of wonder about that too with the way the names work there too, because you have Joseph. You have Joseph in the book of Genesis that goes into Egypt, and then you have Joseph here that goes into Egypt. You could just say it's coincidence, but I don't know. It just seems like it's not to me. Because you have even the end, like the gospel begins with the Joseph and Mary, and it ends with the Joseph and Mary. It has Joseph, that one there that you're showing, and Mary, the Virgin Mary, and baby Jesus, and then at the end it has Joseph I think it's Joseph. I think his name's Joseph, who buys the tomb to put Jesus in, and then you have Mary Magdalene outside the tomb, and then like resurrected adult Jesus, and it's like it's really interesting. We're looking at an icon of Jesus on Mary on the donkey riding into Egypt. I was catching Andrew up a little bit on the Ishmael becoming an archer thing and that whole idea, the rabbit trail we're going down.
Hey, Andrew.
It's good.
How's it going, Hezzy?
I'm gonna have to get back to work, Jason. So I'm sorry. But I got another minute. So you guys, again, you were talking about who? Jesus and Mary coming into Jerusalem.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
Yeah, well, we were just talking about that. Andrew mentioned how they go into Egypt riding on a donkey, and then he goes into Jerusalem riding on a donkey as well. We weren't quite sure what to do with that yet, but then and I also mentioned how it was. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying again, like what we discussed, what the donkey symbolizes. So every time you would see Jesus riding the donkey, it's supposed to be like a mastery over the mundane, the natural, really fully being in control of that, which you could see Bilam fails at, right? When his donkey speaks and he wants to hit his donkey because he's so not aware, even though he's so powerful, he's so not aware. And sages talk about that he would also sleep with his donkey, but like he's clearly was not aware of of the proper orientation of what's standing in front of him. Like his donkey keeps moving to the side because he's scared of this angel, and Bilam is not capable of seeing this. So I would say like if you're saying Jesus is walking on this donkey, it's supposed to be like a proper version of that orientation. His donkey's not nervous about any angels. It's fully understanding what its position is. as being like a vessel and a vehicle for the divine.
Hmm.
And there's the whole symbolism of the ox and the ass, right? Donkey is the Gentiles.
Yeah, I mean, like you have to be sensitive with Jews. We had a lot of different ideas over the years. It's a lot of anti-Semitism, so I'm sure people were feeling sort of like in a dunking mode. It was the earlier dunking, exactly, the original dunking. So, and again, like in our history, I was talking earlier with Jason about the decree of Ezra about like, not marrying any foreign women. So there was a lot of obviously a lot of tension with Jews and the outer world, and definitely terminology was used and words were used and things were written up which were racist at time and very problematic, just because the attitude was we have to think about surviving. And this is always a question with regards to the Noahide movement. Like, why do we not really hear about this until like now? Like, where was all this? And the attitude is like, right now I'm thinking about not getting killed. So I'm not talking to other Noahides about like how they could find God. Like my community was just like destroyed. So like the focus was always internal, which was a problem. And Jacob doesn't like this. My attitude is with the return to Zion, it has been the only time where we could start thinking about these concepts of like, okay, I could take a breather, I could look around, and I could start having a discussion with the outer world, which Jacob thinks is, heresy. Whatever. He's a good guy.
That's funny. Interesting. Yeah, I'm glad these discussions are happening.
Yeah, I need you guys heard about this. You guys heard about this board, the board of directors, the drama around what's going to be with the board. Who is this board? So I was talking about this with my wife yesterday. I was talking about this with my wife yesterday that on one hand, it's very exciting. Like, I really want to be in this kind of space. On the other hand, I need to see, like, I was telling Moises, like, I can't be going to, like, my neighbors and be like, would you like to fund Christian movements like, like Michael's school where he's working with kids, teaching them about Jesus? They're going to be like, yeah, like, no. Like, Michael seems like a really nice guy. Like, we're not going to be doing that. So yeah, I have to see how something like that works. Even the questions of like me being a board on something like that, because on one hand, like this is such a beautiful, flowy space. And on the other hand, I'm still me.
Well, this is why that idea of the whole intermarriage thing, it feels extremely relevant to me, because you're kind of being confronted with all of that right now. As far as ideas go, I mean, and traditions and all those things. Like, how do you?
Can you repeat that again?
I was saying, like, that's why this whole idea about intermarriage and harlotry and all that stuff seems incredibly relevant right now, with all the stuff you're dealing with tradition and different ideas coming together, and how does that intermingle, and how do you not lose yourself with all those intermarriages of ideas and things like that?
So, from my perspective, at least, I mean, this relates to Zephaniah, like, us all, calling out God's name with one accord, and the house of prayer for all people. So clearly you got to have some mingling if everyone is praying together, right? And if we're all using the same language, and by the same language, it doesn't mean we're using the exact same words, that they mean the same thing. And which is what the issue was in in the Tower of Babel, right? So we learn that they got all confused and like the tower broke down and they couldn't work together. Now you'd have to say like, it can't just be like they spoke different languages, right? Because if let's say suddenly I can't speak English anymore, I'm only speaking French. If I needed a hammer, I would show you what hammer looks like. And then you'd be like, oh, I got it. Here's your hammer. The attitude would be that the text uses the word like a brick is a brick. I don't know what it is in English. Levana, v'chamar, the chamar. Like that's like these what these words mean, and there's no other interpretation. So like a difference would be like I could say, wow, it's really hot outside, and I could also say like, wow, she's really hot, right? And those both mean different things. And that was not permitted there. The attitude was like, don't give me these abstractions of ideas that you have. Like we're thinking like so. Calling God's name in one accord doesn't mean we're speaking the same language. It means that our abstract ideas are unified. We could realize where needle to thread happens. And then your question is like, okay, but how does this not get in the way of, like you're just saying, like you're mixing, you're intermingling. So first of all, I'm following God. So if God is now calling Egypt my people, he was also calling the Israelites my people. Right, so we're talking about a time where these terms are now getting meshed. The Egyptian could be my people. The Jews are my people. We have the kings coming and praying and then going back and doing their thing. So I said this, and this might sound like, rude from my perspective or condescending, but I see it as it is in that time, when that time comes. And I guess in a certain way, that's what Jacob and I are doing in this little corner. I don't want to say it's like evangelizing, but it's when asked, explaining what we understand of these topics. And I think Jacob does a much better job about this, specifically with Christianity. We're attempting to constantly show like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, sprinkle in some mysticism and the Far East in there, how these things all relate. And trying to put them in terminology that that we're discussing together when we talk about the donkey, because the attitude is when you come to the temple in Jerusalem to pray together, if I want to speak the same language, I'll be like, okay, your abstract ideas, these 7 abstract ideas are great. Keep on using the word Jesus. It's all good. These other abstract ideas, let's say the Trinity, how we see it, would be like, you're misconstruing. Like that's not how you're supposed to be reading it. You're supposed to be reading it this way. And those 2 other things about drinking his blood, knock that out. Don't do that anymore. That's nonsense. And then the attitude be like, now, Father DeYoung, go back to your congregation. You can keep on talking about Jesus. You can keep on using Mary. You can use Mary Magdalene. Like Jason and I could keep on having this discussion about the harlot. That's all fine once we know where these concepts join up in abstraction, and so that would be the idea. And then we could all be praying in a different language, but all in one accord. Now, as a Christian, as a Muslim, or as a Sikh, you could tell me to go jump in a lake, obviously, and tell me like, we don't need your orientation. Okay.
No, I mean, I think this is really helpful. Like, and even when I was talking to, what's his name? I can't think of his name on the EA Dawa channel, when I went over there talking to them and they were talking to me about Allah and everything, and I was just asking them questions. I was just, grew up and you hear certain things about Islam, like I would hear certain things about Judaism and all this stuff, and then now I get in conversations and I'm like, most of that, at least in the little conversations I've engaged, most of what I heard growing up is probably false. Like Jacob will say about Christianity, he's like, Christianity, I always heard this and that. Now I talk to Christians and I find this, a lot of them don't actually believe this sort of thing. But anyways, to say when they're describing Allah to me and I'm asking them questions about what this one God that they're focusing on is, it seems extremely similar when you keep pressing the issue. And I feel like that happens in maybe I don't want to say every religion, but I mean, I feel like you could press almost anybody, and if you kept asking them questions and it kept pressing and digging hard enough, you would find that I don't see how you wouldn't get down to finding that we're all trying to worship that one creator God, because there is just one God. Then we're eventually gonna have to get there, because otherwise you're just gonna fall apart, because he's the one thing that holds everything together.
So I agree, and I think the way that should be practiced, let's say, is okay. I got into a cab yesterday with my wife, and the taxi driver, he's like, "Hello," and he says, "How are you?" So I say, "Alhamdulillah," and he answers back, "Baruch Hashem," right? Which in Hebrew is "Praise the Lord," and I said in Arabic, "Praise the Lord." But the attitude was I responded back to him in his language and he responded back to my language, because it was just like, we're talking the same language. So I purposely am using that language because that is a speaking in one accord, where it becomes natural for me to just say like Allah, because I recognize that just means Eloha, which means Elohim, which means God. It's all the same thing. So again, with Jesus, it becomes a little more difficult. He's so tricky.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I've said this before, and I know Anselm and some people are like, because both Jews don't say this. Islam says Jesus is a prophet. Judaism doesn't say that because of its tense history. But let's say that's the furthest Jews would be able to go, I think, is to say that he was a prophet, basically. And obviously, and their claim would be that like concept of the Trinity and things like that, these are misunderstandings of Jesus's teachings of hypostases and, these different concepts of God. Clearly, I understand that would be very problematic for you guys, but and then that's the hence of like, the Unitarians and the Trinitarians and differences there.
I have a question. So what first hypostasis, is that the image of God in man? Is that what that is, basically?
It's like instantiation, you could say. Like literally,
Correct.
it means understanding. So you could say this here is a hypostasis of book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
That'll take me a second to get there. Sorry.
It's like what's the underlying substance of like what you're attributing something to, right? So like,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a definition.
I have a question. I kind of wanted to see what you would think about this story, Hezi. I don't know where this comes from. I have heard this before. I tried to bring it up in our last conversation to Fawad for a second, because I was asking him about the idea. I thought it was part of Islam, but apparently I guess it's in Christianity as well. But there's the idea that Satan, or this evil being, is an angelic being. God tells all that he creates Adam, and then he tells all the angels to worship him. And you have the one angel that says, I'm not going to bow down to Adam. I'm only going to worship God. I won't worship man, because I see what man is. He's corrupt. And so then God says, because you won't do this, or whatever, he becomes this evil being. So then I just heard this recently, that this is somewhere in Christianity, where then after that, God shows Satan that he tells him about Adam. Satan refuses, and then God reveals Jesus, and he says, look, I'm actually man, or something like that. I guess that revealing the image of God in man, and so his refusal to worship man is a refusal to worship God in a way. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, Andrew, go ahead.
You see this in Life of Adam and Eve.
Is that what it's from? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we don't. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Oh no. Well, you can go first. There's a part about Christian that ties into Christianity that I thought was extremely interesting. But
So we don't have that in. First of all, I know Andrew doesn't like my evil doesn't exist or evil is good. Okay, yeah. But I see Andrew like walking in school, like stubbing his toe. He's like, "The hell with Hezi." So yeah, we don't have that conversation with Satan being a bad dude or a fallen angel. The only thing that there's a crazy story about Moses' death.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so when Moses, it's time for Moses to die, God tells Moses, like, it's time to wrap it up. Okay, you were the OG. It's time to go home. And Moses is like, hell no, I'm not going anywhere, bro. Like, I want to see Israel. I want to see this. Like, this is not happening. And God's like, no, this is happening. So Moses starts praying, and he tells the oceans and the land. He's like, pray for me, like demand this from God. So they start praying, and God's like, he ignores this. And then Moses himself starts praying, and God quickly calls to the angels. He's like, lock the gates. He's like, if Moses' prayers get in, I won't be able to say no because it's Moses. And they lock the gates, and it says Moses' prayers turn into like a form of a sword, and they knock the gates open, like they're not going to be stopped. And God tells Moses, so God sends the angels down to stop him. So he goes to Gabriel. He tells Gabriel, like, he's like, go stop him. And Gabriel's like, I can't go stop him. Like, like, this is Moses, the man that, like, walked among the angels. Like, I can't. And he goes to Metatron, which is like the biggest angel, who's like known to be like the back of God is Metatron. And that's who one of the sages, when he went into the mystic world, he saw two different gods. One of them was Metatron. That's like, we saw like these two authorities in heaven. Either way, Metatron says, he's like, he was my student. I taught him when he was up 40 days and 40 nights when he was in the sky. I was teaching him. I can't do this to my student. So God goes to Samael. Samael is another name of the devil or Satan, and says, and Samael's like, oh boy, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. So like, yeah, like please give me the okay, and I got this dude. So God tells him, like, go get him. So he goes to him, and Samael's first like sort of taken back because he sees like Moses is just sitting and praying, and he sees like this tremendous light. And he says, he's like, are you the son of Amram? And he's like, of course I am, you fool. Like, that's who I am. He's like, you need to come with me. He's sort of hesitant. He's like, okay, this is like a serious dude. And Moses says no. And then they start wrestling, and Moses grabs him by his horn in the middle of the head, and like he either breaks it off or he throws him like a cross. He gets rid of him. So then God has to come down and says, like, enough of this. He calls out Moses' soul and says, it's time for you to come home. And the soul says, I never wanted to come to this earth when you created me. He's like, but you brought me down and you put me in this body, and you put me in the holiest body in the world. Please don't make me leave. I don't want to leave this holy body. And God says, don't worry. I will have a place for you under my throne. Like, I promise you, you'll still be with me. And he says, like, I don't want to go. So God says, I'll come for you. And then it says, like, Moses lies down, and the angels, like, some angels cover his face, his top part of the body. Some angels cover the bottom part of the body, and God kisses him. And it's called the kiss of death, which is like, someone dies in sleep or something like that. But the idea is that, like, God comes and takes his soul personally back up with him. So again, that's not less related to the story about Adam, but like that's a Satan story, I know. But again, like, it's even in that story, it's the context of it has to listen to God. It's aware of its the hierarchy. It knows its position.
Okay. Yeah. Well, all right. I'm trying to think of how to relate this. Kind of not necessarily getting into the idea of good or evil even coming from God. I guess the point I was trying to make is the image of God being in man, and so where Christ is the same as Adam. He's the same as you. He's the same as, like, when even Christ says, they go to him and they say, when did we see you and we did not serve you? When did this and we did not? It's kind of like as a symbol of God being within man. And so, like, almost this refusal to worship man is a refusal to worship God in a way. Is that heresy within Judaism?
No, not at all, because you see this when Jacob is terrified of meeting Esau and then tells him, Kiraiti Pnei El, like, I saw the face of God in you. Yeah. And like that is like the recognizing, like, he's like, I'm running, I'm nervous, and this is like, dude, you're talking to another godly being. You're talking to yourself ultimately, which is the whole conversation he's having with the angel, right? The so-called
Yeah.
angel is, you know, if he's an angel, why is Jacob more powerful than him? And if it's like, why is he asking for a blessing? What's even happening over there? There's like an internal. I mean, it says when Jacob. When Jacob goes by himself, you have to also imagine this in your head. They're terrified that they're going to see Esau. He's with his whole family. Everyone's like nervous, and then he gets up. He's like, "Sorry guys, I forgot some bags. I'm going to go get them in the middle of the night." And you could assume his kids were like, "Where the hell are you going, Dad? What are you talking about getting the bags? Forget the bags." Like, so
Yeah.
So I think the little bags are these are little pockets of doubt, right? That he's like, I need to wrestle. I need to know what I'm doing. Like, I need a second of silence. He goes back and he's like, I stole my brother's blessing. But there's the whole idea with like, you know, my wife, I married 2 women. Like, I ran away because my mom told me to run away. Like, what am I even doing? Who am I? And the who am I in the godly sense of like in Adam and there's like, I'm not Jacob. Israel. I'm wrestling with God because I see the divine inside me and I recognize the divine in me, which allows him then, when he sees his brother, to see the divine in him. Because I've seen the divine in you. And which required him to see the divine in himself, which was a terrifying struggle for him, right? Like, you know, he almost loses. It's still the break of dawn. And I mean, but this goes back to love thy neighbor as yourself, right? Or do unto others, like, because if you recognize who you are and the self-respect you have, then you must recognize it in the other.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess.
Did that answer your question, Jason?
No, that does. It really does. It's just gosh. Well, because my friend Mitch brought that story to me about the Adam thing, and the thing I thought was interesting is in that story, especially the Christian one, where
next week I'm supposed to meet the guy to go see it.
I don't know what this comes from.
I don't know.
I'm with you.
So the sorry, I got distracted a little bit. So the part I thought was interesting in the Christian part of the story, it reveals God's okay. Won't bow down to Adam. Well, here's Jesus. Like basically, kind of saying in Christianity, he'd be saying, "Here I am. I'm God in Jesus." But God doesn't request him to bow down to Jesus. He says to bow down to Adam. It's like they're one and the same. So all humanity is Christ in a way. And so, and this is maybe probably heretical in a lot of maybe Christian circles to say, but I don't really see how it is though. When you keep even reading the words of Christ, it seems to kind of explain this, like that there is worshiping man. It's kind of like you have to do both. You have to like worshiping man is worshiping God or something like that, because you can't really see God's face unless you see everybody's face. Like God is all of his creation as God, and so like seeing Esau's face is seeing God's face in a way, in that moment of reconciliation or that moment of everybody being unified under the one Godhead or something like that.
So look at the background of our channel that Jacob has. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that seems
that's a Adam Katmondo. That's primordial man, not Adam. That's not Adam and Eve. Adam. That's man. Which Ezekiel is always Ben Adam, son of man, and that's a recognition of not like of Adam. Just I'm reconnecting back to like the source.
Yeah. And I think that's spot on, and that was my question when I was talking to Mitch. I said, so the question would be for Christians, like, not so much would you bow down and worship Jesus, but would you bow down and worship your brother, your sister? Like, would you, if that's the question you're posing me, if God's telling an angelic being to bow down and worship Adam, like, would you do that? Would you worship another person? And the same question goes for Islam. If they have the same story, it's like, would you ask yourself that question?
Well, Islam has a I mean, like I've mentioned this ad nauseum, but like, unfortunately, it's like it's an important point. That in Islam, well, in our story, God creates the animals and then takes a step back and says, like, okay, let's see what this man's going to do right now with naming these animals. I'm interested in seeing this because I'm looking for participation. Naming the animals would be another example of the oral Torah, right? That's a live participation with God together. In Islam, God gives Adam the names, right?
Okay.
It's not participatory.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like this is, which brings up the issue, which is Islam, in a certain extent, bends reality to itself. Like that's not going to change. And in Christianity and in Judaism, there's more of a joint venture, which allows us to be like, okay, reality seems to be like really making these scriptures not really make sense, or we must dig deeper then and re-understand and us invest more of ourselves inside to understand more. Not,
Mhm.
no, like we're going to bend reality right now because we also believe reality itself is part of this, godly divine gift.
So do you not
Well,
like
it's-
last Thursdayism?
Last
yeah, well, I mean, I
Thursdayism?
feel like that gets back to the Archer thing too. Sorry, say more about last Thursdayism. I don't know what that is.
I learned
Young
about-
Earth.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
God created Satan the deceiver, and the dissimilarities between the Bible and reality are, the deceiver trying to tempt us.
So Chabad
Oh,
had some crazy notion that like the Satan like embedded dinosaur bones is like, in the world to like, to tempt us, to have us. It's like, it's so silly because it's so narrow-minded, and instead of being like, why, if anything, it's just showing more of God's glory. It's like, how flippin' amazing to be like limited. Like, no, it was 6 days of 24 hours where like it just happened. And there was a conversation. It's sort of, and this relates back to why, in my eyes, I see Judaism as like, quote unquote, offering orientation tips, so to speak, because like I was hearing a conversation going on between Nate from Grail Country and Luke and Yosef Razin, and they were discussing archaeology, how literal we should take the Bible, and there was a whole discussion going between them. And like Nate was saying, if there actually was a genocide of the Amalekites, then like I don't even know how to respond to you guys. Like if you guys think that that's what actually God did, like it must be all allegorical. And Yosef was saying like, well, it's not all allegorical. But then there was a discussion like sort of within Christianity. It seems to be that there's so much, like there's difference between Catholics and Protestants, sure, but there's also so much ignorance involved with is like, what do these terms actually mean? Or like, what do we think about these things? And then like, if you dig deeper, like, oh, wow, St. Maximus completely doesn't think that. Or like you hear in one of Paul's videos, he's talking on Clown Mount Sophia. He's like, that's not what I learned, or that's not what I saw. And then like, oh, as you realize, you realize it's a more complicated picture. And like, you're just saying, Jason, like, I'm talking to my grandma and she's telling me like, I basically like, I'm not a Christian, but and you're talking to like other people around that tell you like, you're totally Christian. Like that's all good. And it seems to me like there needs to be like inner work done within the Christian communities of like, first of all, like crossing our T's and dotting our I's. Like, what do we actually mean when we say these things? Anybody like, okay, wow, if we thought we were divisive on like 100 things, it's really only like 15 things. And then those 15 things need to get like sort of squared out because, in Judaism, we have a lot more flexibility and layers of abstraction, which just allow us to really like, avoid a lot of those like pitfalls of like, it's a historical book. It's like, it's not literal. Like we're like, yep, good, fine. That was a dream. This is allegorical.
That's interesting.
So ironically though, like we allow ourselves to think that way, right? Because you could even be a heretic because I'm committed to a set of practices which embodies that, right? So it's like, I'm praying, I'm saying, so it doesn't matter to me if these, because they're not like, they are related, but they're not exclusive. I could have, this is an extreme, but like, and this would be heretical, but like, even if you end up showing me, guess what? Moses didn't exist. And this was just like another thing, like an example. I'm like, all right, that doesn't waver my relationship with God.
Yeah, I'm at that point now too. I think even with things like the sinless nature of Christ, I'm like, I don't think that affects even my Christianity, as weird as that sounds. And I think some of it has come from talking with you and Jacob too, when you mention the way Judaism will do the same thing about David, and like Christianity has the same claim about Christ, and I'm like, what? The emphasis seems to be, gosh, I don't even know where I would put it. What's fundamental? What's the to what? I guess what's fundamental to what actually the God is, and how whatever that creating force, redeeming force works. It kind of almost becomes not irrelevant. I shouldn't say irrelevant, but I don't know. I'm not quite sure what I'm getting at anymore. But
I could tell you that in Judaism it says in the Talmud that if you renounce idol worship, you're considered a Jew. And that's very like abstract, because like nothing, I could just be an atheist, and the attitude is like, that's level 1. Like, if you realize, if at the very least realize abstraction, and you're in the club. And like, you could work your way back, but the attitude is like, that leap is already like what we sort of required from. That's why, like, when Jordan Peterson tells Sam Harris that, like, you're not really an atheist, that's what he's alluding to. He's like, you're not. Now, it's very hard to build a religion based on Sam Harris, right? Like, maybe Sam Harris is the one moral dude that figured it out. Way to go. You did it by yourself, and you did it. So, but like, that can't scale. That can't be, you can't do that for a population. They need a narrative. They need a story. They need, Maimonides talks about necessary truths, right? So like, there's things that, like, they're not literally true, they're metaphorically true, but they're true enough that they have, like, the way they manifest in the world. So the question is, I don't think Christians are going into Sunday school with that in their utility belt.
Yeah.
That there's things called necessary truths, because like, no one told me going into school. Remember that when we're going to be talking about Noah, this is all allegorical. However, they're very aware that, like, you could be hearing that at home. There's books that sages that say that. That's like, it's all good. It did happen. It didn't happen. So yeah, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. So you're saying within Christianity, you think it would be helpful if we had that mindset going into it, like this could be allegorical, or this could be taken in a number of different ways.
Now, Christianity does have that, right? The sages like learn it. I mean, however, that's not like, because in Judaism, you are from the age of, let's say, 5, you start learning these texts. You're reading and learning, and you're learning it. So it's part of you. So you always have these texts with you. In Christianity, unless you join this little corner and you want to read St. Maximus, and like, you don't have that. You have like Sunday school, and you have like, this is what they told me, and this is what they told me. And now it's easy if there's confession and there's like, God, that's all I need to do. So like, I'm constantly challenged with that, because like, I'm about to leave the house and like, oh, wait, did we turn off the lights before the Sabbath? Did we do this? Did I do this? Just like, so there's no escaping that sort of mindset. And if you're in that mindset and you are in trouble, quote unquote, like, oh, what do I do here right now? I have to look at my sources. I have to think back. What does this sage say? What does this sage say? How do they interpret it? So I know how to act in this very moment right now. So you're always tethered back to that. However, it allows you, like, you don't have this in Christianity, I don't think. I'm trying to think of like a good example about this, but um, let's say you need to, I don't know, throw out some sort of practice that you guys have, that you guys are required to do. And let's say that is required according to Protestantism, but not according in Catholicism.
Okay. So you
Like-
could say, oh, I'm trying to think of. I mean, I know a reverse one would be praying the rosary or something.
Sure.
That's
So
required.
praying the rosary, right? Okay. So you could be like bugged out about like, I gotta pray the rosary, like, and then realize, or if I didn't do that today, then I was just Catholic today, or and I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Like you could bounce between those lines. So I don't different things on there's Ashkenazi Jews. I do don't eat specific foods during Passover.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Sephardic Jews do. So I would tell my mom, you should hold by your tradition. Now you're walking on a school trip and you get to the mall and you don't have any, and you don't have a lot of food on you. And this mall over here is only selling things that are permittable on Passover, but only to Sephardic Jews. That's when you say like, okay, so right now I'll eat that because I'm also a Jew and God's not going to judge me based on the the skin color I have. And I'm and I'm still within the loop. Now I go back to my community. I'm going to keep on my tradition for cultural reasons, for all those other things, but allow the fluidity to move across those lines. Definitely when you have, let's say, theological or religious issues, why not utilize I would say even terminology that I use over here? Why would you not utilize that for your own benefit? Because it's not like, oh, like I'm bringing in something from, if you brought in a little idol into your house and started bowing down to it, that would be like a problem. But if you wanted to use like other layers of abstraction, I don't know. I look at that as a toolkit. But on that note, guys, I'm sorry. Catch you on the flip.
No,
Well,
don't apologize. It's great to have you.
Mhm.
I probably gotta head out pretty soon as well too. What time is it for you there?
11:14.
Oh man, yeah, it's 2:14 here, and I gotta get up early. But do you got anything you want to say? That was a lot. Can you add to that?
I mean, what he's talking about, I definitely do, and I definitely think that that's the best thing that can be gleaned from Protestantism, that, unity among churches. Like, I read Balthazar, and I'm just perfectly fine with it. That's how I connect Neoplatonism to Christianity. And even though he's Catholic and he has different views on some points, I'm perfectly fine using his language.
Yeah.
I do think that as an institution, our traditions should be aware of that. Like in the wake of the Protestant Revolution, our traditions should be aware that there are good things in other traditions. Like, Catholicism makes up half of Christianity, and they're definitely coming up with good ideas, even though they're not Orthodox.
Yeah. I like a lot of stuff I hear that comes from Catholicism and Orthodoxy as well. Like I think I mentioned before to you, I'm still basically involved in I guess you would probably say extremely Protestant circles. There's not much liturgy at all. But it's still there's still a lot of beauty, and there's still like even good in that. There seems like there's good in all these different, I guess, sects, you might say. I don't know, but there's one underlying fundamental thing that's there that I think like they all believe that unites them, and to be able to see that and recognize the differences but still hold to the unity, I think is important. I don't know.
This is where I'm gonna say I am all things to all men, and Jacob's gonna go crazy over this. But I am more Protestant to the Orthodox, and I am more Orthodox to the Protestants. I talk about liturgy with my Protestant friends, and I talk about the Bible and whatever extra biblical traditions with my Orthodox friends, because both of them need each other. And if I'm going to be that bridge, so be it.
Yeah, that was really good. That was a really good way to say it too. Yeah, that's really good. Mediator, keep doing it.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right.
It's really
well,
fun.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
I feel like it could either be really fun or really awful. Like it probably has points of both, I guess. I don't know.
Mhm.
Could be wrong on that. Sometimes you feel like you're torn apart or something.
Yeah.
In all your ways, Hezi says, in all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your path smooth. Smooth paths. Like that. And love it. Runaway Rascal. Who is a Runaway Rascal again? I know I've spoken before. I can't remember his name right now. I don't know. All right, Andrew. Well, thanks for hopping on. I probably got to head out though. Andrew, the mediator. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I probably head out. I gotta get up early too, so I've been going for a while now.
Mhm. Good
Worn
talking
out.
to you. Thanks
Yeah, it was
for
good talking to you too.
hosting all these things. It's really great.
You're welcome. I don't know if you tuned in earlier, but it was like 2 hours of me just fumbling around by myself. It was terrible. Till is it Teo or Tayo? I can't remember how to pronounce his name. It's the one who just
Tayo, I
commented.
think.
Yeah, luckily he hopped in around the 2 hour mark and saved me for a little bit. Cause it was just, I just felt so bad. I was like, God, this has to just be horrid for anybody who's watching this. Like, I don't know how it had to be unbearable because I was just like, I had no idea what I was doing. But I still want to do it though, because this is kind of one of the highlights of my week. And I feel like if I have free time to do any conversations, I kind of like the one where we get to kind of bounce around the Bible and shoot off these different theological ideas. So those are always fun for me. So yeah, and thanks for joining in. It was fun. Hopefully I'll talk to you soon. So if not, I'm sure I'll see you around on something, some just chatting or something.
Yeah.
Keep bridging the gap.
Thanks. Yeah, you too.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna end it here, I guess. So have a good night.
You as well.
All right. Yeah.